Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayola Obiomi, and you're welcome to another Umbrella Saturday. This is a special edition, and on this edition we have Mr. Olusola Osinoiki. Personally, I'm a fan of Mr. Shola's work. We belong to a couple of communities together, and I've seen some of the impact that he brings to the table. Um, I, my first contact with him was during a presentation I did when I first joined with Onyeka's community. Um, and I'm sure a couple of the community members will join the call today. Mr. Shola comes with a lot of wealth of experience. And I remember my first approach to him, he was really welcoming, and I'm looking forward to this session. Good morning, Mr. Shola. I know you're on the call already. Uh, it's good to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, good to be here.
A couple of people have spoken highly of you. A couple of friends that I've met in the industry, founders, a couple of investors alike, have said a lot about you and your experience. So I'll just let you take over. We like to keep to time. Um,
Okay.
on Umbrella Saturday, we like to keep to time so that we just don't keep people waiting on the call. So many
All
other
right.
people will join in along the line. And they will catch up as time goes on. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll just give you a background to myself, and maybe that might be the preamble to this. I started off doing marketing, over 14 years in marketing space, worked across various industry, and it was a struggle trying to pivot to investment. Yes, I've done a couple of investments on my own, personally, but when I wanted to, build out Umbrella or build out an investment platform, it was a lot of struggle, and I'm sure that part of what you would be doing today is giving us clarity on how we can manage, sudden career change. And I know a couple of friends who are still struggling with, trying to pivot their careers to become founders. Some, I feel like entrepreneurship is hard. You need to have all the money before you go into it. And then, you need to have paid employment, So I'm willing to see how you take up this conversation with founders because I know a lot of founders have also gone back to paid employment just because, they're not able to bootstrap or able to manage, just being founders.
All right. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting day because it's a interesting talk to manage, right? Talking to founders about career change. It's an interesting topic, but I've kind of prepared the deck in such a way that we will talk about things that apply to career, but things that also apply to if you're a founder. And I would deliberately, intentionally, you know, show where I'm weaving the mark. A lot of what I will share today is coming from my own personal experience. I spent over 30 years in corporate. I'll tell that story as we go along. But there's some things that are not specifically about career, they're about journey, right? Whether
I don't know if it's my
you
screen.
see questions in the chat or people raise their hands or whatever. Like I'm happy to go with the flow, but I have prepared like content that will take us through at least 45 minutes thereabouts. But let's play it by ear and see how people want to interact with this, right? Because I know you say you have a lot of questions for me. So I might say something and you say, okay, hold on, sir. Let me ask the question now. But yeah, let's get started. Okay. All right. And like you said, people will join us as we go along.
You
This
got
is
along.
being recorded. Yeah. All right. So where do I want to start from? All right. Can you see my slides? It should say,
Yes, we
who are
can.
you?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. So where I want to start from is,
Mm,
who are you?
mm.
Like, who are you? what's your makeup? What's your frame? Somebody was asking me last night that can everybody be a business person? Can everybody be a startup founder? And I was like, you know what? I'm not sure everybody can be. Everybody might try to be, but not everybody would succeed because there's a certain frame and makeup that makes you a successful startup founder. And you need to take the time to find out who you are and what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and who are you becoming. And actually, there's a great quote by Socrates. It says, know thyself, know thyself, know who you are, spend time discovering yourself. And I have this little thing that I developed called a personal audit. And this audit is like this. It goes like this. Like, number one, what is your mission or vision? Particularly if you're a founder, what is your mission? What are you trying to achieve? Because a lot of people say, oh, I can't fulfill my mission because I don't have funding or I can't fulfill. But your mission goes beyond whether you have money or not. Your mission is your mission in life. Your vision is the thing that keeps you, even if you have to go hungry, you will fulfill your vision and mission because it's not about how you feel. It's about what is in the inside of your DNA. And then number two, you need to understand yourself a bit to know what motivates you. Like if you're about to do a project, if you're about to create your startup, if you're going for a career, what motivates you? What will get you out of bed? What will get you excited? You need to understand that about yourself. And then the third question is, what rewards do you expect? Whether you're working in a career, a 9 to 5 job, or you're working as a startup founder, what rewards are you actually expecting? Like when this startup explodes and let me use Nigerian word, and you blow, what reward are you really expecting? I don't know whether you know about the story of the guy who sold his business. And when he sold his business, he then said, what do I do now? Because he's only 29. He made millions, but he's now like, what do I do with my life? Right? Because he hadn't defined, I say, what rewards does he want in life? Then number four, what is your purpose in life? Right? Your purpose determines where you invest your time. Number five, what defines you? Like if I ask your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your spouse, your boss, your former boss, your co-founder, your team, how would they define you? And actually, how do you define yourself? What rights do you have? What are your strengths, weaknesses? What opportunities do you see? And sometimes I even say, what threats do you see? But actually, that's the SWOT analysis, but you can also do a SOA. Like what are your strengths? What are the opportunities? What are your aspirations? And what results are you expecting? And then finally, in this personal audit about discovering who you are, you ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, if you're a founder, why are you doing it? Right? If you don't raise the funds, will you still continue? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And understanding your why, I will always recommend in a book by Simon Sinek. It's called Start with Why. It's very helpful for you to understand your why. Why am I doing what I'm doing and who am I doing it for? So understanding your why is very crucial in your career journey because when change comes, whether you're made redundant, and I'm going to talk about all these things a little bit more, or because you don't have a job now, you want to become a founder, or you're a founder and it didn't work out, you want to become all those changes. These 8 points help you to really frame those changes. And then somebody will say, but what about the Nigerian factor? Yeah, behind all of these 8 changes it's the Nigerian factor. It doesn't matter where you find yourself in the world because people think the Nigerian factor is limited to Nigeria. There's a factor there's a UK factor, there's the American factor, there's a Canadian factor. But because we are always trying to run away from the Nigerian factor, we forget that in all the different jurisdictions that you go, there's another factor, right? There might be some ease of life, but then there's tax burdens, there is restrictions, there's regulation, there's different things that occur. So you can't allow the Nigerian factor, the UK factor, the Canadian factor to determine who you're becoming. You got to decide that by yourself. Okay. So now here's the truth. Whether you like it or not, you're unique. If I take a sample of your DNA, there's nobody on the earth that would look like you. And so the question is, don't be a copy, be your authentic self. And actually, one of the things that jars me the most as an investor is when I'm sitting down with a startup founder and they said, I'm going to be the Uber of my industry. I'm like, but do you know the story of Uber? Do you know how long it took Uber to actually make profit? And you're actually like, imagine yourself, like, let me change it for you. You're saying, I don't want to make any profit for the next 10 years in my life, in my founder business, right? That's what you're saying when you're saying you're the Uber of, right? But even Uber, when Uber was discovering itself, they didn't know they would become Uber. Like they were solving a problem, they were creating a solution, and now they become a verb. Right. And that's because they were authentic to themselves. And I was talking about with somebody the other day that think about what they were saying at that time when you went to somebody else created a car to be a taxi. They took a bet that actually the owner of the car, a private car, you know how people love their cars, would actually be happy for a stranger to step into that car and take a ride. Now we don't think about it because it's like everywhere. But at the time they came up with this concept, it was unique. It was authentic. It was an authentic solution to a problem. And so maybe I can refine that a bit by saying that be an authentic founder, build something amazing, unique to you, right? Don't try and copy. Don't try and, oh, everybody's doing cross-border payments. So I'm about to launch my own cross-border payment. I'm going to be the money point. Like, just be unique to you. And they always ask you, a founder and investor will always ask you, what's your moat? What sets you apart? How are you going to be competitive? And all of these things are important because when change comes, because change will come, right? Legislation will change. Things that maybe give you access today might not be there tomorrow. So how you manage that change starts with you being authentic to yourself, right? Now, I don't know if there's anybody on this call that's ever watched the film Gladiator, right? But if you have, you will know this statement. What we do now echoes in eternity. What you do now, what you do right now, the choices you make, if you do them right, they will echo in eternity. And the reality is what that statement means is that particularly when you're in the middle of a change, the decisions you take in a flip of a second, pivoting your startup or changing jobs or changing careers, all these things have a way of echoing if you do them right in a positive way or negative, depending. Right. So let's now get into sudden change, particularly in your career. Let me hold it a little bit. I will still flip back and forth with the founder lifestyle, but I'm going to very focus on career now. So sudden change in a career journey, it could be something significant, an unexpected shift. And I'm going to go into some of those. I'm going to specifically list them out so we can look at them in terms of your job, your role, your industry, your overall career journey, right? Even as a founder, the shift could mean that all of a sudden, your whole business model was around Okada, but then Nigerian government decided that no, you can't use Okada anymore. So how do you shift that? Now, how do you manage that shift? A sudden change in a career can be both challenging and exciting, right? So if you are doing one job and then you have an opportunity to change, that could be challenging, but it can also be exciting because it requires you to adapt new skills, to learn new job functions, to like, for example, if you were in a 9 to 5 and all of a sudden you become a founder, all of a sudden you need to know finance, you need to know strategy, you need to know sales, you need to know marketing. So even going from I have my 9 to 5 to I'm now a founder full time, even that requires some level of change and adaptability. And sometimes leading yourself is probably the most important thing that you have to do, right? Okay. Now let's talk about some of the changes that you can experience. Because we're talking about sudden change, right? So let's talk about some macro sudden changes. COVID was a big sudden change. And a book I'm going to recommend later called Winning. In that book, it talks about the MBA story. Because during COVID, remember, people could not gather anymore, and basketball still had to continue. And this guy, who's a coach, told the story of the fact that some NBA players, their performance dipped because now they didn't have the crowd cheering. They're just playing to an empty stadium. And actually their performance dipped because they were not used to that. They were used to them getting the ball and running. And some of them actually their performance totally dipped because there was a change into the environment. They grew up with, people clapping, applauding. But when they got into COVID, some of them, their performance dipped. And he talks about how you need to be adaptable, right? Macro sudden changes could be global recession, you know, for those who are in the founders world, we know the story of the fact that we're in this slowdown in investment, right? Because of the global order, right? And the last one I put, there could be war, there could be FX challenges, there could be inflation. All these things create change because when these things happen, if you're going down one route and you don't change your pathway, your business might disappear. Your company could run out of funds, your runway could disappear, um, your CEO could exit. I think I saw on YouTube yesterday a story of my co-founder jackpot with our seed funding, right? So there could be different things that could create change in your journey. Your company product suddenly expands rapidly. So they're not all negative. There could be positive changes, right? You could launch a product and all of a sudden everybody wants your product. And before you know it, your application is crashing because everybody is demanding the application. So those are macro sudden changes. But there could also be in the job, sudden changes. Like, so for example, you could be promoted at work, you could be demoted at work, you could be made redundant, you could suddenly depart, there could be departures in your team. Even as a founder, all of a sudden your co-founder is like, well, me and you are going to build this thing for life, but actually I've now got Canadian visa and I'm going and I don't think I can continue with you on this journey anymore. There could be a change in your department's vision or mission. There could be unexpected office closure. There are many things that could actually influence change in the job. But then there's also change that comes from family, right? So all of a sudden you get married. I know a lot of young founders who are single young man. They are living in bachelor pads, and if they eat tonight, it's okay. If they don't eat, it's okay. But then all of a sudden they're that age that they want to get married. But they're still a founder, and the money is not raining yet. It's coming slowly. And even in your day job, you could be in a 9 to 5, and all of a sudden you have a new dependence because maybe your fiance, your wife, or your husband, whichever way, there's a difference. A family dynamic can bring sudden change. You could become like me, empty nesters. Like all my kids have gone off to university. They are old now, and now we have an empty house. All right. You could be adopting, and suddenly there's change in your life. Your spouse could relocate, and it means that you too have to relocate. So, what I call the jackpot syndrome, your relationship could change, and sadly, you could also lose a close family member. All these things are things that could bring change into your journey, whether you're a founder or you are in a 9 to 5 role. And so we have to be aware that all these changes will occur. The question is, when these changes happen, what do you as an individual now do to manage those changes? So the second part of this talk today is going to be telling you a bit of my story and then the principles I learned and talk about those principles. And I think those principles apply whether you're in a career or you're a founder or you're an investor. Right. So this is from 2023. I know it's old, but this is about Nigeria, and most of what this call, I guess, are Nigerian, where PwC reported a collapse of the FX market into a single window led to 98% devaluation, right? So think about that from an AWS server point of view or a Google Cloud server point of view, or even if you are selling products. I used to make the statement that if you are raising Forex, you should try and sell in Forex, right? Everybody wants to raise $10,000, but you're not thinking, how do I sell $10,000, right? And that disconnects between, oh, I want to raise $1.5 million, but I'm asking you, how are you going to make that 1.5 in revenue? And people don't really think about it a lot. So, but let's just do some general talk and then I'll go more specific. So, four things that help you to succeed. Purpose, right? Passion. But passion without discipline leads to unfocus. So you need focus, purpose, passion, discipline. All these four things, they work in unison. If you have purpose and you don't have focus, you'll be like, I want to build something, but I don't have the focus and the time to focus on it. You can have purpose but not be passionate about it. I mean, a lot of founders who have started a startup, but they're not really passionate about the topic, right? They're just like, this is what I'm doing now, right? And then the anchor there is discipline. You know, you have to be disciplined in how you deliver, in how you, particularly if you work for yourself now. If you were used to be in a job where somebody checked on you 9 to 5 and they monitored your performance. When you're now a founder and you're working for yourself, if you don't have that personal discipline, if you can't wake up by yourself, if you can't, push yourself, if you can't say to yourself, I have these 6 things to do, and even if you can't do it by yourself, you have a Notion app or something that kind of reminds you and gives you a new rhythm, right? So think about those four things. Don't worry, there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to kind of throw up for us to think about. So one question that people ask is, how does desire play a part when you're going through a change? And I like this quote by Mario. It says, desire is the key to motivation, but it's determination and commitment to an unrelenting pursuit of your goal, a commitment to excellence that will enable you to attain the success you seek. There's a lot in that statement. Desire is the key to motivation. So you have to have a desire to succeed. I want my startup to grow. I want my career to grow. So you start with that. You have a desire. That desire fuels motivation. But you can be motivated, but if you don't have determination and commitment, and I like the word he uses there, to an unrelenting pursuit of your goal, whether that is your 9 to 5 goal or the company that you founded, and that a commitment to excellence that will enable you to attain success you seek. That's how you bullseye it. So I read this in Harvard Business Review the other day. To involve people at the deepest level, you need stories. So I'm going to tell you my story, right? Just tell you my story, my journey. I'll try and keep it quick because I don't know how we're managing the time, but I'll try and keep it quick. But it's hard to talk about a 30-year journey in a
Please,
quick
sir,
few.
take all the time you want. We're here for it.
Okay. And please, when I'm talking, questions come to your mind and you don't want to forget it, just drop it in the chat and Mr. Arola would help us kind of navigate that. So let's look at what is your story? What is the power of the story? So let me tell you my story. This slide is deliberately busy because it's trying to represent 30 years. So um so my story starts technically, let's say my career story starts as I graduate from University of Ife, Great Ife, for those who are that way inclined. I studied civil engineering, and then I always had this desire to work as a magazine editor, as a side hustle, if you like. So I did some of that in between my national youth service. But then I went off to Delta State and worked as an engineer for 1 year in Abo, Ika Northeast local government. Well, Ika South local government. And I worked for 1 year. And when I finished, actually, the local council, the chairman of the council and my boss said they would like to retain me. But I didn't want to. I'm really a Lagos boy, and I didn't really want to stay in Delta State, even though I enjoyed it. But I was like, time for me to go back to Lagos. Got to Lagos, applied for jobs, no jobs were coming. And at that time, my fiance, who is now my wife, she had moved to the UK. So this is way before Jackpot, the current Jackpot. This was I don't think there's many. I don't know what age level we have on this group today, but for those of you that maybe your parents might have told you stories, there's what you call the brother Andrew time. Hey, my name is Andrew. I'm checking out of Nigeria. So we checked out. So in 1993, I left Nigeria to go to the UK. When I got to the UK, there were no engineering jobs, even though I was a civil engineering graduate, no jobs. And so I said to myself, I'm not just going to sit at home and collect government money. I'm going to work with my hands. And the only job that was available was security. So I applied, I got a job as a security person. And even on the first day I was going to work, I was thinking to myself, what is security? Because me, I spent most of my life in Nigeria, and the only thing I can think of is Megad, right? That's all I can think about. But then I met my boss, her name is Amanda, and I will talk about people as we go along on the journey because they were my mentors. Because mentorship and coaching are things that really help you manage change in your life. So I met Amanda, and she really taught me on the job. So it's what I call job mentor. She taught me what it meant to be a security guard. And I didn't even know that there's a whole industry around security that actually at one point when I started working in security, I even thought that I would do security for the rest of my life because when your eyes are open, that oh wow, there's a whole technology behind it. There is a whole it's not just somebody that's wearing a uniform. There's a business behind it, and so I became a security guard. But with her help, I became a very good one. And then one day she said to me, "Look, I don't feel that you are being maximized here. You should go out and look for another job and get a because depending on what level you are, you got more money." And so I pivoted from Pegasus and then I went to work for a company called Securico. And because I was now in a higher grade, earning a little bit more money, I actually went into store detective. I actually went into plain clothes security rather than just wearing uniform. So, and there, the lesson I learned there is to recognize that I'm a Christian. So I always believe that you're working for God ultimately. So, um, whatever your hand finds to do, you need to do it well. Because if you do it well, guess what? You will learn from it. It doesn't matter what that job was. Now, the key there is that, and I'll show you on the screen because it goes top to bottom, then bottom to top. So the key there is that while I was doing a 18-hour shift as a security guard in a nursing home in Manchester, I saw an advert. An advert came up and it said um, they're looking for graduates of African and Caribbean descent. And I looked to myself, I'm a graduate from Ife, I'm a Black African. So I applied and I wrote out, it was a handwritten application. And at the end, it said, any other comment? And I was like, what other comment can I write that would stand me out? The same way we tell founders when you are doing your pitch deck, what can you put in that pitch deck that nobody else would have put in, right? And so in the others comment, I wrote, I will give you 101% commitment. And I didn't realize that that statement got the attention of the deputy director of estates and services. And he told the team, I'm going to interview this guy myself. So this guy comes down, John Wilson, comes down to interview me. And he asked some preliminary questions. And he said, so what have you been doing for the last 18 months of your life? Right? I said, oh, I've been working as a security guard. He said, okay. And, how did you find that? I told you. And he said, okay, you know what? I'm going to change this interview now. This interview, you're going to get this job or not get this job based on your experience as a security guard. And so he changed the question and said, tell me what you would do to secure the University of Manchester. And depending on how you answer that question, that's going to say whether you get the job or not. So imagine if I'd done security and I hadn't learned anything. But because I had learned a lot of stuff, I was able to, I don't know, I think I spoke for 30 minutes. Just do this, do this, do this. I'm sure I used a combination of James Harley Chase, James Bond. I think I put everything together and came up with a strategy. I came up with a 5-point strategy. And at the end of the interview, he got up, didn't say anything, went to the door and he said, you gave me 5 ideas today. Two of them I'm actually going to implement on Monday. And by the way, you got the job,
Oh, wow.
right? Um, and it's very interesting because 2 years later, when I was leaving the university, no, 3 years later, sorry, when I was leaving the university, he brought my application form out to my leaving party. They had a leaving party. There were like 40 people in the room. And he brought it out and he said, when this young man first came to us, he wrote something at the back of his application. He said he would give us 101% commitment. I didn't know what that meant. But having worked with this guy for 3 years, I'm sure we can all attest that he has given us 101% commitment. Um, and I say that because even till this day, I still have friends who I worked with almost 25 years ago who are still at the university. So anyway, so that kind of leads us to the blue dot where I did my 1 year as a graduate, and then at the end of that 1 year, there were no jobs, and they said I should create a job for myself. So I did. I created a job called technical clerk. I did that job for 2 years. And while I was doing that job, I learned how to program, right? I became a programmer, Visual Basic, and I taught myself how to program. This was before YouTube, before online learning. I just used books, I bought books, and I taught myself how to program. I taught myself well enough that I could now go out and, you know, get interviews for an analyst programmer. And so I got a job at the College of Law as an analyst programmer. You can see the change, right? Civil engineer, security, university, doing admin, stroke, management. And then I went to work as a programmer for the College of Law. I can tell you so many stories about that interview, but the main thing was that the main interview was very easy. In fact, they had given me the job. By the end of the interview, they were like, well, there's a technical test, but we're sure you'll be fine with the technical test and, everything will be okay. So I went into the technical test. But remember, I taught myself programming. So I didn't learn the right way. I learned through graphical user interface. So drag and drop. And now they were putting in front of me, select star. I was like, I don't even know what that statement means. What does select star mean? And there were 10 questions, and I can tell you that I couldn't answer one of those questions. My boss then comes into the room, who later became my mentor, Chris Harris. He comes into the room and he says, oh, have you finished the test? I said, sir, I don't even understand any of the questions. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know what that question says. And the guy goes to the whiteboard in the interview room and starts explaining the question in a way I will understand from the way I trained myself. And that's how I was able to get 6 out of 10 to pass the interview. So I always say to them that when they hired me, I was the least qualified programmer they have ever hired. But by the time I was leaving 3 years later, 2 years later, I was one of their best programmers. That even when I got another job, they didn't want me to go. Anyway, um, continued the story and then applied to go and work for GlaxoSmithKline, where I had like 5 promotions in 5 years. I became a senior analyst programmer, a lead analyst programmer. Then I realized that all these programming jobs were going to India. This was the days of outsourcing. And so I navigated and shifted to becoming a business analyst. And then doing that for 1 year, I became a project manager. And then I picked up program management. And then pivoted again. I went to work for Accenture, right? So now I'm at the top if you're tracking with me. So you see, I'm talking about change in your career, right? You can see me pivoting. And then I moved to Accenture, working in the HR BPO space. Did that for 2 years. Then I got headhunted again by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So now I'm on the last box here, where Laura was my mentor and Barry, and I went in as a manager, got promoted to senior manager, eventually became a director, headed up the success factors practice for Europe. And then my life in startup started. Some things went wrong. I won't share those today, but I eventually pivoted to go and work for a company called Deliveroo. So Deliveroo, if you don't know it, in 2017 to 2018, Deloitte says, you can Google this and find out, Deloitte said that Deliveroo grew by 100,000%. So think about a startup that grows by 100,000%. And in my mind, apart from Uber, I think Deliveroo is the only company I know that went to Series H in their fundraising round. Series H was done by Amazon. Amazon invested 400 million at their Series H. They're now IPO'd, and they've just been about to be acquired by Grubhub from the US. So anyway, from Deliveroo, I was there for 2 years, probably one of the best experiences of my life. I then went to work for a company called Naspers. Many of you might not know Naspers process, but if you think of super sports, um, multi-choice,
Deal Day as
uh,
well. They invested in Deal Day
and
as well. I think they
yeah,
invested
deal
in Deal
day.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, they were the original investors in
Investors
Nigeria.
in Deal Day.
MTN,
Yeah.
they own OLX, PayU.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
mean
fast.
they're huge, right? But their claim to fame, like I always say that they invested in Tencent in China. They invested about 30 million. That 30 million today is worth about 105 billion. So well, I think McKinsey says um, NASPA's investment in WeChat is still one of the best return on investments that exists. So if you invest 20 million, today be repaying 100 billion. If you read the annual reports, they get 5 billion in dividend every year from WeChat. So incredible investment. So I worked for them for 5 years, moved to Berlin. Uh, then after a couple of years, after 5 years, I got made redundant. Long story, not for today. And then I decided that, you know what, I've done corporate. Let me now work for myself. So today I now lead my own organization called Josh Leadership that have different departments, consulting, coaching, mentoring, etc. So that's my story of my journey and how I managed change in my journey. But there were certain things that helped me, right? That will help you as you manage change in your own organization, as you think about your founder journey. There are certain things that apply. So I think um, these are keys to career advancement or managing change, right? But before I get into those, let me just again throw out some statements. This is my own statement. The one thing you can truly control in any change or disruption is your attitude and your reaction. Right? If you go for a funding round and you don't get the money, the only thing you can actually control is your attitude and your reaction. Right? That's the only thing you can control. Really. You can't control why they didn't invest, why they invested. You can't control that, but you can only control your attitude and your reaction. So here are 7 things that I think help you when you experience sudden change. Number one, knowing what you have in your hand. What do you actually have? Leveraging the power of your network. Have an end game mindset. Understanding what time it is on your career timeline. Resilience and grit. What do you see ahead of you? And then finally, impact of mentors and coaches. So I'm going to go through that now. Um, yeah. Okay. Here we go. So first one, doesn't matter whether you're a founder or you're in a career or you've just graduated. The question I always like to ask is, what do you have in your hand? What do you have? Your education, your current skill sets, your experience, your location sometimes is an advantage or disadvantage, but it creates something for you. And actually, what you have in your hand is your potential also. So you always start from who are you? Who are you trying to become? And what do you have in your hand? I talked about passion, purpose earlier, focus, discipline. All these things come into play when you go through change. Knowing your starting point. What's your baseline? What's your baseline? What do you have? What can you leverage? This is a very important key principle when you're going through change in life, whether you're going from a different 9 to 5 job, or you're going from 9 to 5 to founder world, or founder world back to 9 to 5, or 9 to 5 to education to NGO. All these things are all different changes that can occur. But the one thing you need to take an assessment of is, what do I have? And maybe I can even add here, if I was talking to founders, particularly, I could say maybe you have the capacity to bootstrap. Maybe you have friends and family, right? So the question is, as you start on this journey of change, what do you have in your arsenal? Number one. Number two, oh, sorry. And what you have in your hand can be improved on by self-assessment, by developing skills, right? We've already talked about it. Know and improve yourself. I talked about the SWOT analysis, but one thing that people don't tend to do very much in this generation is get feedback. How am I actually doing? Are you learning? Are you leveraging mentorship, coaching? Are you studying market trends? A lot of startup founders will come to me and say, hey, look at my business, do what I'm trying to do. I say, okay, but who are your competition? You've not really researched it. You've not even researched, you don't understand, you don't know what is your market entry point, or you just have an idea, which is great, but you need to do some research, right? Understand, like, when you're going to the market, who are you going to challenge? Who's going to challenge you? Even simple things like doing a name search for your business. Like, does somebody else have the name that you are using? Those are simple things that some people miss. And I feel that all fits in the self-assessment skills development, developing the muscle of improving, getting feedback, continuous learning, and professional development. This all relates to what you have in your hand to manage the change you're about to see. And coupled with that is your visibility, your brand. A lot of people want to go and raise capital, but there's no visibility. The first thing you do when you send me a pitch deck, first thing I'm going to do is go on your LinkedIn profile. Because at least LinkedIn, you can't lie too much on LinkedIn. You can try, but at least there's a public record of who you are. Google your name. These days, even I will go further and just put your name into ChatGPT and say, tell me about this person. Now, if you don't have visibility, you don't have a brand, it's going to come back empty. So if it comes back empty, I can't really see anything. I'm already nervous because that means you don't have credibility, you don't have brand visibility. So the question then is, how do I actually build my brand, right? So I've put like 5 points here. One, just deliver high quality work. So a lot of people we know, if I mention some names, Onyeka, Nubi, um, E, um, GB at Flutterwave, all these guys, Paystack, Shola. When you hear their names, there's an association of quality work that maybe where they started from or the first the first startup that they built. So having this ability to consistently deliver quality work, wherever you find yourself, is a key thing. Number two, cultivate your own online brand. A lot of founders, they don't want to have a Instagram, LinkedIn, or any of these presences, but these things are important, particularly if you're trying to build your career. Uh, um, have a positive reputation in the ecosystems that you find yourself in. I'm here today because Mr. Ayola invited me because we're in the same ecosystem. Actively contribute to team, to company objectives, invest in others. Like, I'm asking you to be mentored and coached, but also take time to invest in other people. All these things help you build a brand and build who you are becoming. All right. Okay. So the next point of the 7 points is to leverage the power of your network. And, your network is your net worth. And a lot of people who are raising finances or trying to sell a product they don't have enough network to enable that, right? So here are 5 points around networking. Number one, connect to others, right? That's how you build your network. Number two, understand your network. Who is in your network? Are they people above you, people below you, people people around you? Like, understand your network, understand the network that you're building, understand who are in your network. These are critical things that you have to do to enable you to have a strong network, uh, right? That's important. Um, 1 second. Okay. So understand your network. Then number three, connect with your network. So for people, they have people in their LinkedIn profile or they have people in their network, but they don't connect to them. They don't like their posts. They don't follow up on them. Number four, learn from your network. Don't just go to somebody in DM and say, so I want you to invest in my company, but have you learned from me? Do you know me? And then number five, give to your network, right? These are key things that help you leverage your network, and your network is your net worth. And when you talk about strategic networking and relationship building, there are things that you have to think about. I've said already, your network is your net worth, but you build relationships that foster trust and mutual benefits. Invest for the long term. A lot of people just want an investor to invest in them and then they don't want to connect with them again. In building networks, respect at all costs, right? Respect is important. Whether they're younger than you, older than you never know. The cycle of life, it keeps spinning. And you never know where you're going to meet people again, right? Maybe today you are at an advantage point, tomorrow they will be at an advantage point. So depending on how you interact with them will influence how you build that network with them. Okay. All right. So the third point on how to manage change is have an end game mindset, right? What's your game plan, right? A lot of, particularly in career, I see a lot of people that don't have plans. They just, what's the next job I'm going to do? And the same thing with a lot of founders, they talk about what they're doing, but they don't have a 5-year plan. That's okay, where is this all gonna go? Right? You see a pitch deck, there's no exit strategy, there's no 5 years plan, there's no projection of revenue. So I always say to people, if you want to manage change well, have a end game mindset. Begin with the end in mind. I think that's what Stephen Covey said. So have a 1-year plan, have a 5-year plan, have an end game plan. When do you want this all to end? And if you're saying, how do I build end game mindset? Well, I've put some suggestions there. You know, start with your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you trying to achieve? Remind yourself. It's something we learned in project management. It's like always go back to the business rationale. Because you can be going down a project and you forget why you started this project in the first place. And so Prince 2 methodology says always circle back to the original reason why this project was started. Number two, you can get mentors. And number three, you can mind map your life journey. Like, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And simple things that, 5 years from now, I would like to just writing those things down helps you develop a end game mindset. So, particularly for those in career, when you're thinking about change, you have to ask yourself, this change that has come into my life, where am I on my career timeline? Where are you in your career journey? Are you a youth corporate that's just starting? You started a job and then before you know it, the company folded. So you're at the very beginning of your journey, so you can pivot. You don't have to be stuck, right? You haven't really done much. Yes, you studied civil engineering, but there's nobody's constructing, so you don't have to stay there. You can pivot. You can become a surveyor. You can do different things. If the change happens when you're in the middle of your career, you've built some muscle around certain things, and so you might be less flexible because you've kind of learned certain things. Then number three is, if you're in your later part of life, and this is your last rodeo, probably this is your last job because you're 50 or 60, right? And then in the middle of all of that, maybe this change is now an opportunity for you to become self-employed, start a company. Maybe it's time to pivot to something different. Or maybe it's actually time for you just to retire and do something completely different. So understanding where you are in your journey will be very helpful to manage change properly, right? And the three words I like to talk about when you're thinking about where you are in your journey, impact, legacy, and value. Where are you on that journey? Are you at a stage where you're trying to be impactful? Are you building legacy? Are you telling a story? I don't know how many of you saw that Mr. Otedola released a book about his business journey. Very interesting. If you haven't seen it, go and look. A lot of people have started writing reviews about it. But this is all part of building legacy. And then number three is value creation. How are you creating value for those around you? Whether in your startup, in your day job, how are you creating value? These are questions you should always be asking yourself as you go on in your career. So you look at my career that I shared earlier, you can see there's lots of pivots and change. So the fourth thing to look at, or fifth thing, sorry, is resilience and grit, right? We hear this word resilience a lot. We don't hear a lot about grit, so I'm just going to dive into both of them for a second. So resilience is this ability in you that allows you to recover from setbacks, right? You're about to pitch your company, investors are ready, you log in, and then NEPA takes flight. Your generator doesn't kick in. Your inverter decides that there's no more juice. How do you recover from that? Right? How do you recover from that? That's where resilience comes in, right? And resilience helps you to recover from setbacks, helps you to adapt, to change, to thrive despite adversity. It's resilience that makes you say, okay, my laptop is not working, but I can jump on my phone, right? It's resilience that helps you maintain a positive outlook, right? And find ways to cope with stress and challenges because there will be stress. You know, you want to go to a meeting. I think Onyeka tells a story on his Twitter that, you know, how he came up with the idea of trips was because he was trying to get to somewhere and the only way he could get there was on a motorbike or he had to take a downfall in Lagos. And that's what the idea and the vision of trips was born. And, you know, it's now it's raised multi-millions of dollars and it's doing very, very good revenue. I think they're very close to making profits now. So think about that. Like resilience made him not just be stuck in a setback, but it made him to come up with a solution. And so I have a small definition here. Resilience is not falling apart when things get bad, even though you have every reason to, every right to fall apart. Resilience is what keeps you going in the light of setbacks. So let's talk about grit. Grit, on the other hand, is this tenacity, you know, it's the ability to persevere and maintain focus on long-term goals, even in the face of obstacles and resilience and setbacks. So resilience is embedded into grit, but grit is more than resilience. It's a combination of passion and perseverance that says you're walking through your darkest night and you keep going because you know there's got to be light at the end of the tunnel. Helps individuals stay committed, determined towards achieving the goal, right? You've been knocked back several times. We all know the story of Calendly, how many times Stockwell was knocked back and his startup failed. But today, he's a billionaire because of Calendly. And that's because he had grit. You know, he had resilience, but he also had grit. So grit is a driver of achievements and success, independent of and beyond what talent and intelligence can contribute. You know, grit is that ability to just push through, you know, knock walls down when walls are in your way. Um, and I think both grit and resilient benefit from having a goal mindset, right? Because grit and resilience don't operate in a vacuum. They operate in the context of goal setting. Because when you have a goal, you can put grit into it. When you have a goal and you have a setback, you don't feel set because you know what your ultimate goal is. We've all heard of SMART goals, you know, make it specific, measurable, achievable, resilient, relevant, and time bound. And actually, what I find is that a lot of founders, when they go from a 9 to 5 to become founders, they forget this simple thing that you should have a SMART goal. Ask a founder, okay, when are we going to break even? They look at you and this, what are you asking? Like, but it's a smart goal. It has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable. Your go-to-market strategy can't be vague. It has to be smart, driven, time-bound. So pay attention to performance processes. If you're working in an organization, ultimately, I say to people that if you don't love your company, whether you're the founder of your company or you're working for a company and you don't love it, then look for another job because you need to love your company. And then I will always keep repeating myself, have a plan, have a 12-month plan, a 5-year plan for your career, for your business. And this concept of respect at all costs, even in the goal setting, is very important. So we're coming to the final point. Um, I said before that in my own career journey, mentors have played a big role. And this later part of my life, I'm beginning to see the value of coaches also. So let me define those two things because they're not the same. A mentor is somebody who has been where you're trying to get to and can show you shortcuts to get there, right? That's a mentor. And I would say these things about an effective mentor. Number one, they see greatness in you and they find ways to bring it out. They take you on the road they have been and show you shortcuts to the destination. John Cosby said, a mentor is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. That's what a mentor does. Right? And that's why we encourage founders to have mentors. And I think most of whether it's Tony Elumelu Foundation or Techstars or YC Combinator, they all have a mentorship program within it because mentorship is an accelerator, right? Um, and then a coach is different because you see, a coach is somebody who may have not been where you're trying to get to, but have the ability to give you good methods on how to identify gaps in your skill, gaps in your knowledge. A coach helps you build confidence and self-esteem. If you're a fan of football or any sport, a coach is the one that's on the sideline. Come on, let's go. Come on, team, let's go. They might not even be able to play themselves, but they are there to motivate you, to encourage you. They use knowledge, expertise to help individuals, teams achieve their goals. They're like a cheering group that kind of cheer you on to become who you need to become. So that's the difference between a mentor and a coach. And if you can have both in your life, it's helpful. But if you can't have both, at least have one, right? I wrote a book about managing up. This is specific about career, right? And I talk about how to manage your manager to get, the book is called Managing Up for Career Progression. And in that book, I talk about two types of environment that you can find yourself in. And the truth about it is that these environments are in founders' worlds too, right? So there's an environment where it's healthy, where you and your boss are getting on, you like the company likes you. There's a way you manage up. And I write these 6 things. I'm not gonna go too in detail on all of them, but just read them out. So this whole idea of respect at all costs, right? I think for 20 years of my career, my bosses were always younger than me, but they're my boss. I have to respect them. Doesn't matter if I have more degrees than them, doesn't matter if I know more than them, they're my boss, so I have to respect. So learn that idea of respect is very important. When you are in a healthy environment and you're managing up, remember that you shouldn't always hog the limelight. Don't always try and be the star, right? Defer and deflect. What I found is that the more you defer glory and you deflect it, it bounces back on you. All right. Actually, glory shines better when it's bounced, or light shines better when it bounces off objects, right? Sometimes when you're in your career or in your job or in your startup, you forget the big picture, understand the macroeconomics. If you're not getting a promotion, there might be a reason why, because the company is about to run out of money, right? So understand the big picture. Um, Seek to understand your boss. Score big when your boss needs you to score big. And then understand the power of covering, right? Don't expose yourself. But sometimes you're in an unhealthy environment where your manager and you just don't get on. So I then say, learn the art of laying low, don't pull attention to yourself. Seek out mentors and coaches. I think you need it in both environments, but I think more so when you're in an unhealthy environment. Study to show yourself approved so that people can see that you're a good workman. Protect others. Ride the wave. And then, when you're in an unhealthy environment, you need to know when to bow out. Even in a startup, you need to know when it's time for you to shut it down because this is not working, right? And yes, you want to run him more. Sorry, that's a Yoruba word, but you want to put your head and you want to stay focused. But sometimes you have to say, you know what, let me let this go so that I can open up something different. I think if Stockway or Calendly didn't let go of those early startups, we wouldn't know him today as we do know him now, right? So just a reminder, you know, career progression can be a challenging experience. But with time, patience, grit, resilience, and courage, you can successfully navigate through it. So I try not to do a presentation without recommending books. So I'm going to recommend 4 books for you to read. Don't worry, I don't get any commission on these books. Um, the first book is called Winning, right? If you want, particularly if you're a startup founder and you really want to understand greatness and how to get to it and how hard it is, I'll recommend this book called Winning by Tim Grove. For those of you who know a little bit about basketball, Tim Grove, he coached Kobe, he coached Michael Jordan. He coached Michael Jordan to win 6 rings, and he tells a lot of stories about Michael Jordan and why Michael Jordan was so successful. But he also tells us that winning is hard. Winning is unforgiving. You win today, tomorrow, for those of you that like football, if there are anybody, Premiership, you can win the Premiership this year, but next year, guess what? You start all over again and you have to win again. Win all those matches to get to the top, right? Then the next book is by Ram Chandra. I mean, even if you can't buy the book, go and follow the guy on LinkedIn. He tells an amazing story of how it is to become a high potential leader. For those who are in like consulting businesses or those who are leading people, you need to look at this book called How to Lead Smart People. And finally, Betting on a Darkie is written by Metal. It's a story of an amazing entrepreneurial spirit that first of all was an entrepreneur, then now he's an entrepreneur, and it's just an amazing guy in South Africa. It's a great story. If you like reading, that's a good book to read, just to tell you the story of one of the first Black engineers in South Africa, and just an amazing story. And it just tells you that, this life is not straight, Not every career is like mine, up and down, but some careers are straight. Like if you're a doctor, you probably will stay in the same job for most of your life, right? Stay in the same field most of your life. But the way the world is going now, even with telemedicine, even doctors too, they are pivoting, right? So nothing is the same. So it's good to learn adaptability, right? And then, of course, I cannot not promote my own books. I've written 2 books, The Art of Managing Up for Career Progression and Managing Sudden Change in Your Career Journey. These books are available on Amazon or on Paystack or anyway, when you get the slides, if we share them. Well, I think we will, because I will share the slides and then people can get the books. And I think now it's question time.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, sir. I think the first thing I wanted to say is how do we get Josh how do we get into the Dutch Leadership Academy to just learn a couple of things? I'm blown out, and for me, I just keep saying to myself, I have a long way to go. I have a long way to go. Just learning and listening to you. Um, Even just speaking about your career changes alone. For me, I have similar stories, very similar story, but I've not done 30 years. I've done at least maybe 15 years thereabouts, maybe half of it. And I find it very interesting. Some of these things you say, I don't think that personally, I don't think that I write them down. Uh,
Mm,
but I think now, um, I see the need to write it down. Sometimes it's in your head and it's playing in your head. You're acting it out, you're doing it, but sometimes it doesn't work because it's not on paper. Yeah,
mm,
I don't know if there's anyone that can relate to it. It doesn't work for me. Maybe because it's just in my head. And I lie to myself sometimes to say, oh, Sometimes I write it on the board, but I never
Yeah,
go back to that board, you know. Um, so I think that one of my first questions to you is that looking back at your career,
yeah.
uh, how were you able to differentiate setback from opportunities?
Mm. Sometimes it can be clouded, right? You have a setback and then you have an opportunity. Sometimes it's clouded, but actually sometimes in the setback lies the opportunity. Right. Right. So it's actually in the rejection that then opens another door, right? Because I remember when I was made redundant, I've been made redundant twice, but the first time I was made redundant, my coach said to me, because we had this meeting and I was like, I don't know what I want to do now. I don't know what I want to do. No. And he said, okay, you don't know what you want to do, but do you know what you don't want to do?
Hmm.
So list out the things that you definitely don't want to do. And then what you want to do becomes clearer. So that wisdom in really helped me frame. So I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I don't want to do these things, right? And the more you wrote the things you don't want to do, it started pointing you to the things that you want to do. So that's the whole idea of setback sometimes makes you think a little bit deeper to say, okay, I've not been allowed to do that, or that door has not opened, or I didn't get that funding. Does then that now create an opportunity, right, for a different type of partnership, a different type of conversation, a different type of connection? And I think that's kind of how I've done it. I've kind of kept this end game mindset. Like, what am I trying to do? Like, for example, it's very easy. I think it was easier as a security guard to have an end game mindset because I was like, as a security guard, I know that I cannot be here forever. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I will find my way out. I will study, I will improve, I will apply, and I will find my way out. Because I had an end game that I will not be here forever. But as you go further along your career and things begin to get entrenched, sometimes you actually need a big shift
Hmm.
to refocus your mind. Because, once you are into a rhythm, whether as a founder, you're getting constant revenue, you almost feel like, don't, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? You have that mindset. But actually, you might need to pivot. My wife runs a music business in Nigeria, a music school, and we have our mainstay. But if you really want to do something different, then you have to open new branches, take a risk, and taking risk sometimes is where the challenge comes. But if you don't take that risk, 5 years later down the line, when you now have good revenue from that risk that you took, um, you won't realize that. So I think it's that combination of having where you're trying to get to ultimately helps you identify whether this is a setback or an opportunity. Or actually, is the opportunity going to lead to a setback or the setback going to lead to an opportunity? And being flexible to hold those two things um, together. Did
So,
that answer your question?
yeah, yes, you did. You did. And in all of this, right, where does grit and resilience come in? Because I know that resilience sometimes look like is there when there's setback, right?
Yeah.
there's not setback
Yeah.
and you're resilient, right? But grit, I think, comes in the opportunity. Or it looks like because you've been there, you've been holding up, you've been doing certain things, and then grit shows you the opportunity. I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
it
try
could
and
be
talk.
like that. But I that's why I said when I was talking about it that sometimes actually resilience can become just like a spiral cycle. I will survive, I will survive, I will survive. But grit kind of pushes you off that spiral cycle
Hmm.
into let's take an opportunity, right? So think about it like when I was working in the university and my contract was coming to an end, they came to me and said, we want to keep you, but we don't have a job for you. But can you create a job for yourself?
Hmm.
So that's more than resilient. That's great now because now you have to sit down and think 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what would I want this job to be? And build into that job, you know, create,
Something, yeah.
create something that even you yourself that was applying for it will be happy to be there. Like, 25 other people applied for that job, right? It was such an interesting job. And I don't think I would have become the person I am today without that opportunity. So I think there is this hand and glove kind of thing, right? Where resilience is the one that keeps you to the place where you can apply grit, you
Hmm.
know? Um, because if you don't have resilience, you can't really apply grit, because grit almost pulls on that, you
Foundation.
know, foundation. Exactly. Thank you. And like I said, in the Nigerian economy, um, you've done everything you need to do. You're prepared for your pitch. Then NEPA takes light. Your generator doesn't kick in. Your inverter doesn't kick in. You can lose heart. But grit says, okay, maybe I should go to my friend's house. Maybe I should try my phone, right? It doesn't lose heart. It's the motivation. It's the energy that says, this is a bad situation, but we can fix it. I can jump on an Okada and say, okay, guys, I was trying to pitch for my house, but I come in person. You know, so that's great. And I think you need both to be successful.
Hmm. Yeah. So, and along the line, when you were speaking, you spoke about
Yeah.
mindset shifts. When do
Yes.
I know that my mind needs to shift? Because I feel like a lot of founders get stuck. We're stuck with
Yes.
this idea, we're stuck with this problem we're trying to solve. And beneath it, something is giving us the revenue, but we're not focused on it because our problem, the term that we or the sum that we're trying to address, right, is okay. So let me make it practical. I'm a
Yeah.
fintech. I'm trying to solve cross-border payments. No, or I'm a fintech. I'm just trying to do payments, and
Yeah.
then along the line, I have customers who come to me and say, "Oh, can you help me do this cross-border payment? Do you guys do cross-border payments?" I'm getting those inquiries, but because I came out to just do payment integrations, right?
Yeah.
The POS payment and the rest of it. I'm not seeing the opportunity. When do I tell myself that it's time for a mindset shift?
Well, and that's where, so I know I might seem like a sales guy, but that's where mentorship and coaching comes in, right? Because by yourself, you probably won't see that easily, right?
Founder,
But
right?
as you,
Or
pardon?
even a career person.
Yeah, even a career person, you might not see it easily. What you need is somebody to bounce an idea off. Like, for example, you just said it now. Where if this was a mentoring session, I'll say, okay, what's it going to take for you to actually get revenue from your cross-border payment?
Mm.
What is it going to take? Because you're so focused on X because that's what you came to do. But hey, there's a particular opportunity. I was in a board meeting yesterday. I won't mention the company's name, but I was in a board meeting there, the e-commerce platform, and they're doing all this hard work to do their B2B program. But guess what? B2C is bringing in revenue on a day-by-day basis. So B2B is future revenue, it's big numbers. But actually, the B2C did the best revenue it's done in the month of July. But the founder was so focused, I want to build my B2B business that he didn't even celebrate the fact that, hey, hold on a second, we have just done our biggest
B2C
B2C number,
transactions, yeah.
right? And I think, but in the board meeting, because he had the right board around him, we were able to make him realize that, yeah, you can keep pursuing this B2B, but don't lose sight of this B2C that you haven't done any advertising, you haven't done anything, and it's just growing by itself. You've now done your largest month. So I asked the question, what tiny change do you need to make to just make that B2C go from X million that it was in July to 2x in August? Because you haven't done anything and it's growing. Platform is there, people are coming, they're buying, they're executing it. It was almost like small money when there's big money to chase. So I think that where that mindset shift comes in is by having that opportunity to consult with others around you. So let me give you a perfect example. I was a programmer. I don't think I was the best programmer, but I was good enough. And then my colleague said to me, this is where peer mentoring comes in. So even if you don't have a mentor at the top, you can have a peer. Right? My colleague said to me, Shola, you like people, you're always helping people, you're going to these grievance meetings, you're protecting people's interest, like, why don't I move into HR? I had never thought of moving into HR. And then she didn't even stop there. She said, look, I saw there's a job in HR for technical support. It's not technical, like technical support for the payroll manager.
Mm.
I think you'd be good for this job. On her encouragement, I applied. And then I spent the next 20 years of my life in HR. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just because I was open enough. I think Ayomide had his hand up, but I was open enough to have this peer conversation. Because she could have said, you'll be good in HR. I was like, man, leave me alone. I'm happy where I'm doing, right? No, but she saw the potential in me, right? Sometimes I just reach out to her occasionally, like, thank you so much for that advice, because now I've built a career in this space, right? Based on somebody just observing you and giving you a suggestion. And I think that's part of the mindset shift is sometimes you need an external voice to help you see what you're not seeing, right? And one of the things I sit on a few advisory boards for startups, and I say to myself, my one job is to help you see what you're not seeing. Because that's what I'm good at. I've kind of developed this over time as a consultant. I can see a picture and you might not see something, and I can just state the obvious. I was in a meeting with a startup founder, and we were talking, and he said he had this problem, and I just said, "Why don't you do this?" And for me, it wasn't rocket science. It was almost like, I've seen this before. That's the power of mentorship. I've seen this before, so I can quickly identify that. Oh, why don't you just pivot that bit? And the guy, it was supposed to be a 1 hour meeting. After 15 minutes, he said, I'm stopping this meeting. I'm just going to execute what you just told me because I've been running, this problem has been with me for 18 months, and now you're just shone a light on it. And, that's how the problem was fixed. So that mindset shift sometimes needs, what's it saying in physics? That a body of mass stays untampered unless an external force applies pressure to it, right? I think inertia, right? So that's the same way. As a startup founder, you're kind of doing the pedal, you're going. And it takes, a YC, a Techstars, an investor, an angel, a VC that says, hold on a second, have you thought about, why don't you? And there's so many stories. Twitter wasn't originally like a a space where you should go and write things. It was supposed to be a dating. I can't remember. No, was it YouTube? One of them was a dating app originally. I think YouTube was originally a dating app before it became what it is today. So sometimes you just need that slight change of mindset. Anyway, you want to take Ayomide's question?
Yes, yes, I think we should. I think we should. Ayo.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, everyone, once again. It's great to be here. Another episode of this wonderful umbrella session. And thank you, Mr. Shola, for such golden words, such golden teachings you've dropped today. I've learned quite a lot. And my question is in regards to what caught my attention was when you spoke about being a board advisor for a B2C startup. This is exactly what I myself is trying to establish. My startup is a B2C marketplace, and we are planning on launching in an undeserved area in the northern Nigeria, the northern Nigeria space. So my questions to you, sir, is I think they say when you see an opportunity, don't just lose it. So I can just jump on the fact that you are here right now, sir, to ask.
Your mic is muffled.
Ayo, you're breaking up.
For your advice
Ayo,
on
you're
some
breaking
key
up.
aspects
You're breaking up.
you have experienced with time. Oh, can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better,
Yeah, we
sir?
can hear you better.
Wait,
Okay. Can
yeah,
you
I think
repeat
say
your
again.
question because we missed it?
Okay, all right, sir. So, all right, sir. Yes, I would go ahead. So, what are the issues with time that you've experienced um, in running and the issue?
Ayo, you've gone again. You've gone again, Ayo. We can't hear you, but maybe when
Issues
you,
of running B2C startups?
Are
I
the
think, I think your
techniques
question
that
is
are
what
being
are,
done to get early traction, revenue, for a ground that is built in terms of even your marketing strategies, in terms of those strategies that are needed to succeed in the B2C space. I need your total summary of guidance on this. And also, sir, another thing is what does it also take for you to be an advisor to someone like me who is an early founder trying to get into the space as well, and it's more like needing guidance and mentorship. What does it take? What do I have to do to to get you to be on the good side for me to actually learn and be even mentored, learn one or two key things from you. So this is it. This is it, sir.
all right,
This is
thank you, Ayo. I think the
it.
first part of your question was what are the if I remember, um, the things or the advice that Mr. Shola can give you regarding B2B um, marketplaces, right? Just because your line went off, Ayo, if you just want to recap that first part of the question. Ayomide, are you there? Okay, so I think that you can just go. I think I was just trying to ask questions around the B2B marketplace, e-commerce marketplace that you were speaking about. Around what are the challenges that you see in that space with B2B marketing. And then the other part of the question was, what will it take to have you as an advisor for him?
Okay. Yeah, I think let I hope that we got the
The
in
question
fact,
right.
he's gone now.
He's gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me wait for him to come back
All right.
before I answer that question.
Okay.
Right? Or should we just answer it because it's recorded and he can
Well,
watch the
I think we
recording?
should wait, but let him come in. But I have a question for you, Mr. Shola. I
Yeah.
know that some founders on this call are stuck right now.
Yeah.
What are the first practical steps that you think that we should take to unlock new opportunities? Because
Yeah, go on.
I personally am stuck as well.
Mm,
And I try to keep innovating, to be very honest. But there's that stage where you tell yourself if you innovate again, you might die. Because
mm.
you probably need to take out more funds. You probably need to do more work, maybe have
Mm,
more revenue coming from a side also. And if you innovate again, you might just die.
mm. And
And
I'm
there's
gonna put you on this.
sorry, let me just add, there's to say that if you don't innovate, you will die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll put you on the spot so we can actually do this question more like a dialogue than
Okay.
let me give you my point of view. So maybe I'll start with one question, right? So let's say this was a private conversation. I will start with this question, like, when last did you take time to reflect?
So usually I do that on Sunday to plan the
Okay,
next
okay,
week. I do that on Sundays to just plan the next week. I just go into reflections.
yeah. And what is the outcome of your reflection? Like, where does your reflection lead you to?
So first off would be that I've taken some decisions to say, okay, maybe this was not the right decision we took last week. Why don't we try
Yeah,
something more like A/B testing from a
yeah,
marketing perspective?
yeah,
Let's try this and let's try this and let's see what the result of both of them would be.
yeah,
Sometimes the least area of focus becomes what becomes more successful. So
yeah,
for instance, with Umbrella, partnership has worked for us.
yeah,
But we go to them to say, oh, we have this service or this offerings, we want you to benefit from it. There's always that initial closed doors that says, oh,
Yeah.
we don't think we need it right now. But if we go from the angle of partnership, the doors open.
Yeah.
They're right open to us, right? But it took a lot of A/B testing to understand that people are rather going to collaborate and partner with us rather than we going to them saying that we are offering the service.
So you can see there, and the reason why I wanted to do it as a kind of working example is a combination of certain things, because there's no one answer to your question.
Yeah.
There is a space for reflection. There is a space for testing. There is a space for
Action.
feeling fast, right? This doesn't work, so let's try this, right? But in the midst of all of that, I think that maybe the one thing that you haven't talked about, and I'm sure it exists, is what is the overarching end game, right? What's the end game for Umbrella? So as long as you keep that in focus, right, it helps you and I think a lot of particularly younger founders or newer founders don't really understand why we say, what is your mission and vision, right? Because your mission and vision is what keeps you alive when you are small. It's the same thing that will keep you alive when you are big, right? So you have to think about it. For me, I've been in boardrooms with HSBC, large organizations that are also asking the questions, actually we feel stuck, right? Because people think that it's only founders that feel stuck, but even large organizations could also feel stuck. You could see the competition biting away your market share, right? And what keeps organizations stayed focused is remembering the mission and the vision, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? Because that always anchors, because you need an anchor, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why did we create Umbrella? And if partnerships is not one of the whys that you created Umbrella,
Yeah.
then Prince 2 says, go back to that vision statement and say, actually, we wanted to do X, Y, and Z, but also now we want to extend partnerships. So it almost gives you permission to explore this new idea. And sometimes what we need is permission to explore, right? And be honest with ourselves, right? Like, are we doing as good as we thought we were doing? Right? And having that mirror reflection and asking feedback, like I think you would have heard this many times that at the end of the day, we build a product, but we didn't take any customer information. We didn't check with the customer, and then we built it and we hope that they will come and buy from us, right? But actually, it's a different story if you can go on a journey with the customer where you try to sell them something and say, no, we don't want to sell, we'll do partnership. All of a sudden, you now have a new methodology. And I think it's that willingness to, as much as you have an idea of where you want to go, that you don't stay stuck. You're willing to be agile along the way, right? You're willing to say, hold on a second, we built it to do this, but now we have customer feedback. Can we quickly pivot it to do something else to get us to where we need to get to? So I think that's the first thing, that whole, how you manage your thinking pattern, how you manage your thought pattern. That's number one. Number two is to grow, to change your mindset, you need to be educated, right? What do they say? What got you here will not get you there, right? So something got you here to this point where you've birthed Umbrella, but if you want to Umbrella to evolve into something greater, you need to expose yourself to sessions like this. You need to read, you need to watch YouTube videos, you need to learn from other people. And learning is probably one of the best ways to correct your mindset, right? The more you learn, the more you expose, you hear somebody else's story and think, oh, okay, that's why they did that. Okay, how can we do that? How can we replicate that? How can we own that? And then the secret sauce to all of that is as you learn, you throw on authenticity of who you are, right? Because it worked for Mark Zuckerberg doesn't mean it worked for you. If somebody comes and says, I'll buy your company for 1 billion, and you say no, you might not become Meta, right?
Yeah.
So it worked for him because of his own nature. So you can't copy. You can learn, but you can't copy, right? So yeah, hopefully that answered the question. But it's an intricate question because I think there is safety in bouncing ideas. There's safety in reflecting. There's safety in all these things. And there's safety to also say, like, if you drive and you look at your fuel tank and you say to yourself, how much fuel do I actually have? You might use your brain and say, it's just above quarter. I'm sure I can get to Ibadan and back. But sometimes it's better for you just to add some more fuel, right? And it's just knowing what you need to do. Do you need to add fuel or do you need to keep going? I know David said he had a question, but
Yeah.
Mr. Ayomide is back.
All right. You can go, sir.
Okay. So Mr. Ayomide, you were asking, I think you were asking a question around how to build a B2C company, right? You've joined twice now. Anyway, I'm going to go and just try and answer that question, right? So, there is a myth, right, that because we have 200 million people in Nigeria, that, B2C is easy, right? But that's kind of a myth, right? We also have this myth that once I make it digital, everybody will buy. There's also a myth around people don't take this idea properly that actually people buy from people they trust, right? Trust is very important. So how do you build a trust brand? And how do you actually represent the market you're trying to serve, right? So because all of us are digital natives, we assume that everybody in Nigeria can use an app, right? And actually, the new phenomenon, which I thought was only in Nigeria, but actually is becoming global, where people are now using WhatsApp as the key to product delivery because people don't want to go and download another app. People don't have enough data to do application downloads, but what they do have is they use WhatsApp every day. And so, question I ask is, does the solution you have an opportunity for it to be used through WhatsApp? I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that it's something you need to think about. You're in rural Kano. How do you get people to be in an e-commerce platform? I think there's something that a investor I like said. He said, a lot of times we spend a lot of time becoming an online product and we forget about the offline opportunities. Yeah, and if you're going to succeed in e-commerce business, you need to understand your customer very well, right? And know, like, okay, you're in a place where who are the competition around you? And ask that hard question, why have they not come? And what have you seen that they haven't seen, right? And also bear in mind that, e-commerce has multiple parts, right? I'm not going to do a whole lecture on e-commerce now, but I'm just trying to answer the question. It has multiple parts. One is product, placing the right product. But then once I like that product, the biggest challenge is payments.
Checks.
Second biggest challenge is logistics, right? And then the third biggest challenge is safety, right? So yesterday my wife bought a product online, and we had to send a boat driver to go and pick it up and go and deliver it. And your heart is doing big, that they should not run away with your product, right? And so understanding that actually I'm doing an e-commerce business is not as simple as, oh, my products are on my website or my products are in my WhatsApp app. Actually, how is logistics going to work? How is the payments going to work? And how are you going to build trust with the end customer that you that own this e-commerce platform have thought through payments, and not just payments, but payment security. You've thought through logistics and making sure that their goods get to them safely and on time. And so if you think about e-commerce with those lenses of it's more than I'm selling a product, it is I am selling a product that has a fintech element to it, has a Logitech element to it, and then you have the product itself. So those are the surround sounds. And then when you look at the e-commerce platform itself, how easy is it to use? How easy is it for people to navigate around it? All those things also come into play. So I think one has to have that mindset of what am I actually building here? And be honest with yourself and say, because, you know, when Jumia started, they were not doing deliveries themselves, but now they do deliveries. When Jumia started, there wasn't Jumia Finance. Now they have an element of finance, even if it is a wrap around somebody else's finance platform. And so understand where you are, understand when you can outsource, understand what you buy in, understand what you build. All those things have a way that impacts the success of your e-commerce business. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of, what are the pitfalls and the things to look out for. And I think maybe the biggest thing I'll end with is trust. Trust is so important in e-commerce. There's a reason why I live in the UK, and there's a reason why when I click on Amazon and I buy something, I don't even think twice. I know say the thing will arrive. And if it doesn't arrive, I'll get my money back. So building that into your platform, that people know that if I go on X, I will get my product. And if I don't get it, they'll give me a refund. Having that kind of building those things into, because that's what makes a customer sticky, right? Even you yourself, know that you will go to the same place because you know that when you go there, you're going to get this type of quality. And so think like a customer when you're thinking about your platform, when you're thinking about your deployment. And the second question you asked is like, how do you get me on board? Like, how long is a piece of string kind of question? But here's the thing, right? So my investment philosophy, when I say investment, people just think of money, but also investment of time and expertise comes from knowledge of you, right? So even before I said yes to Common Umbrella Startups, Saturday, sorry, I told Mr. Ayola, I want to understand what you're trying to do. I want to listen to I want to get to know you. Because if I don't know you, how can I advise you? Right? I need to kind of know your why, understand what you're trying to do. And so I can come prepared. So I think part of that answer to that question is let's go on if it's something that you think we should do together, let's go on a journey of discovery. And it might be that I say to you, actually, there's somebody better than me that will help you at this state that you're at. Or it might be that's my promise. I'm not here to land grab or anything. Like if I think I'm not the guy, I'll think I'm not the guy, right? And it also depends on what you need. So a lot of people want more advisory, they want mentors, but they're not taking the time to say, what do I actually need? What do I want? And if you can't do that homework, me and you will fight. So that's just the way. All right. So hopefully I've answered your question. Should we
Let's
take
have
David's
David.
question?
Yeah, please. Let's have David.
Very well, you did. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. David, ask a
Hey,
question.
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing session. I've actually learned a lot. Okay, a quick question. As a prop tech startup founder,
Yeah.
and I actually had this amazing idea, and I've been in the real estate space for over 5 years, and there's so many problems, right? So I had this idea and I started developing it. I've not built a tech product before. I've built several businesses, some failed, and there are some that is still successful. So in this journey, I've learned a lot. But I think my major challenge right now is in the aspect of fundraising because as I was doing what I was doing, I noticed I had competitors, right? Though the idea is still very new in this part of the world, in Nigeria, but in the Western world, there are other tech solutions that is addressing the same issue. Then recently, another startup launched in Dubai addressing the same issue. But in Nigeria, it's just like maybe two or three, new pioneers trying to do something similar. And I noticed that majority of these people, they have actually raised funds, because I realized that the product, the infrastructure requires, it's kind of capital intensive. It requires money to actually build the infrastructure. And what makes our product different is that we are kind of like integrating AI into it, and we are actually solving the major issue on ground, because I realize that most of these startups, in as much as they have raised money, but they are not really solving the problem, because it's not just just to raise money and just to have users, but are you actually solving a real problem that people face every day? So I've we've been bootstrapping. I have a couple of persons, join me, and we've been bootstrapping. We spent a lot of money to build an app, built for Android, built for iOS, and God helped us. We actually had our first paying customer, but since that first paying customer that we had, we've not had any other customers since then. And we've spent a lot of money trying to, do a good product, right? And of course, we don't have the AI integration yet, but we have something that is workable. We have something that is usable, right? But at this point, I feel like the same thing he said. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I don't even know what to do next, because we've exhausted a lot of resources and we're just wondering what to do next. So that's the question.
Okay. Again, you people are asking complex questions that we need to sit down and do seminar on. But here, let me try and answer your question. Right. So first of all, it is a founder dilemma, right? That um, we find ourselves in, that we think we know what the business needs and what the customer needs, and we build it, and then the customers don't come, right? So it's a dilemma that you find yourself in a lot of the times, right? But the question I will ask is, first of all, let me talk generally. First of all, you're in the wrong state to try and raise finance, right? Because the story you would tell um, will be complicated. So I would say I will hold off on raising finance unless finance comes to you. And the reason is because the climate that we live in now, means that investors are weary to invest in a promise anymore, because they know that if you're serious about it, you can use AI and you can build a platform and you can be live tomorrow, right? And so there's a weariness. And I also encourage people that if you kind of look at the landscape and think, I'm going to get a lot of no's, it might be best that you don't expose yourself to too many no's to get too many discouragements, right? But then think to yourself, maybe for you, particularly in this particular case, why did that first person buy from you, right? Um, you haven't built out the AI product, but they bought from you. And how can you double down on why they bought from you, right? And see whether with what you already have, you can attract, like you have your long-term goal of building this AI out. But in the meantime, can you attract customers, even if it's offline, to build momentum, right? Because at the moment, um, the rite of passage before for investment was a good idea. That was the rite of passage. You don't get even to talk to a VC or an angel if you don't have a good idea. But the landscape has changed. Like having a good idea is not good enough for you to get investment. Now you actually need to have traction, workable traction, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Early this year, somebody raised 2 billion, right? The lady who left OpenAI, she raised 2 billion in funding. There's no money, but one person, she raised 2 billion, right? Because there's a lot that underlays that 2 billion raise. There's trust, there's network, there's net worth, there's potential expectation, there's branding, there's visibility that allows her to command 2 billion. Whereas with you, you are still evolving. And so you have bootstrapped, you have built, you're on iOS, you're on all these things. The question is, how can you find customers that will buy what you have so far. And as you use that revenue to then build out your end game, right? That's kind of how I would look at your situation, because I think pushing the fundraising button, you're going to get, when are you going to build your products? Is your MVP ready? What's your traction? So it's almost like you want to, on the G, if you like, be building out traction. Look for, based on what I have now, what can I actually, what can I actually put down, right? So, some ideas, right? So you build a community around the problem you're trying to solve. Get estate agents, get landlords, build a community, right? Feed that community with information, um, provide provide insights, and then guess what? Because of your visibility, it's like the question Ayola asked earlier. You're doing payments, but then one of your customers says, I have a cross-border problem. Do you solve that problem too? And it's almost like you want to be in that solving mode because you've got the first tick, right? A lot of founders don't even have the first tick of we have revenue generated. And it's very hard. Property is very hard, right? Because whether you like it or not, there is a big network. There's a big offline network around property, right? And if you ever try to get a property, don't know where you're operating, you know that some of these things are so offline that even when you see them in Castle magazine, the house already been sold. It's just there for advertising, right? So hopefully I answered your question, David. Did I answer your question? I want to make sure I don't leave you hanging.
Okay, yeah, I believe you're trying to say that I should focus more on working what I have already and
Yeah,
go back to that first customer and try to find out why they bought, why they
yeah,
actually, So I think we can, that's something that's valuable. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Good. And then when you ask them the why, then go and find people who have that same why so that you can
Build around them.
build around them. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I will just go into two questions. I didn't plan to keep you this long because I know that your time is very valuable. But
Yeah.
how do founders turn unexpected challenges into growth pivots? Right? Challenges like failed fundraising, team exits, regulatory shocks. How do they turn all that changes, right? I know that we spoke about career changes, but these things are also
Yeah.
mentioned. They're part of our career journey, right?
Yeah.
How do we change all that? I'll give you an instance, right? I was in a crypto firm when the CBN love letter dropped, I think February 2023. And that was a major shocker for the business, right? Because
Yeah.
at that point, we hadn't even built out peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
This thing. We were basically just using the transactions, and bank were facilitating the transactions and the rest of it. And, we had to pivot. But I know a
Yeah.
lot of businesses who were into our space, they're shut down automatically
Yeah.
because there was no even funds to even do a P2P, right? How do we how and of course the regulators seem like they always come for you when the spotlight is almost closed, right? That's how I see it sometimes. When
Yeah.
you're already in the spotlight or you're about to get to the spotlight, regulator comes at you, right? To say, oh, we're changing this, or this is a new law, or this is a new thing. How do founders navigate this? And I don't think it's peculiar to Africa or Nigeria.
No. No.
Yeah,
No. No.
I think it's even like everywhere.
Yeah. It's interesting because you tell the story and then you inside your story is the answer, right? So somehow your own organization had built within it. There's a word that we don't use in the founder world of Africa or Nigeria specifically, contingency,
Hmm.
right? So we don't build, I studied civil engineering. So I learned from a young age that contingency is key, right? So when you set out the building materials, the bill of quantities for a building, you put in a contingency that the price of cement can go up or down. If it goes up, you want to build in a contingency so that you can finish the project. And I feel that in Nigeria, and I'm generalizing, we don't build in contingency. We don't, even though we know it, we need to, we don't. Um, because we're positively good with being focused, but we don't build in fail back system. So, for example, I've had one or two founders that lost all their code, right? Because they didn't have a backup of the code, and that's the end. Like, what do you do then? Your code that you've been building for something, you didn't put it on GitHub because you're doing Ijebu, and now the laptop that all that code was on died. Because we don't build in contingency. We're not taught with that contingency mindset. So it's not our fault. But I think to answer your question, I think more and more founders, particularly if you're successful enough to raise cash, need to be building in contingency, right? Knowing fully well that you're in a volatile space that can change. Um, and I'll use a real example. My wife teaches in Nigeria, and well, we have a school in Nigeria, and we used to do a lot of home visits. But even to get from Ikoyi to Lekki, sometimes you might miss the class, right? So we pivoted a little bit, not totally, but pivoted a little bit to online, which takes out some of the, um, unpredictability because as long as NEPA is working, you don't have the predictability of does a boat driver get you there on time, etc., etc. So sometimes the way to kind of manage these changes is number one, going fully aware, right? If you're in the fintech space, be fully aware, right? That there is possibility of changes. Like it's not, so it's different if you think, everything's gonna stay the same, right? It's like COVID. Like nobody was prepared for COVID, right? But those who had built-in resilience, guess what? They navigated it. And some people would say that COVID was their best year, actually, from a revenue, look at the growth that happened for food delivery, all the money point and all the money, but not money, but
Okay.
Chowdex and all these companies, they benefited from this, not just in Africa, but even all over the world. And so sometimes opportunities will present themselves. Back to your first question, because I'm looking at most of your questions, Viola, they're linking back to opportunities, setback, and yeah, right. And so I think for a founder, one thing you have to build in is contingency into your mindset, right? And then I know that as being Yoruba, we don't want to leave any opportunity. Like if you talk to people now, you have a will, they'll be like, I'm not going to die. Back to send that kind of mindset. But you need to go past that and say, look, I'm building a business here. And legislation could change, rules can change, my founder can leave, the funding I think I'm going to get, I might not get. And so how am I building a little bit of contingency? And the bigger you become, the more contingency you have to build in, right? And I'll give you an example. I worked for Accenture. Accenture had a concept called the bench, right? The bench, as in we will overhire because we know that if we win a big contract now, it's going to take us too long to go out to the market and hire people. So we hired in excess and put people on the bench. So when the opportunity comes, we can easily deploy, right? And so some people build in this concept of a bench, of a contingency. And I think what would help founders, again, is to have a good team, right? A good team that doesn't panic, right? Imagine your CEO panicked, imagine your COO panicked. You would have been one of those that closed down, right? But you had the presence of mind to pivot. And I know a lot of startups that they started down one way. They wanted to create their own coin in property, but then the door closed, and then they pivoted to, okay, let's do something different. Let's do hotel accommodation and hostel accommodation, right? And it's that agility that I think founders need. Now, it's kind of it's a difficult one because sometimes as a founder, you also need that focus. Like we're building a crypto platform. But now we can't. So what do we do, right? But then you ask the wider question. We're still in the fintech space, so let's pivot. And guess what? Now, 2 years down the line, people are now jumping back into that space. Regulation is now allowing them to jump back into that space, and that's the difficulty of the landscape that we live in. Have I answered your question?
Yes, yes, yes. I was even going to make another example, same with
Yeah,
my days at OP as well.
yeah,
All bikes were, or all ride were a thing. And then the government policy came all of a sudden. The government didn't want bikes anymore on the streets. They had to
yeah,
pivot, and then by pivoting, the POS, the agents, they were just basically went straight to their financial model, which was the original. And that says takes me back to what you said. Always have the end game in mind.
yeah,
The end game was always the transactions, not necessarily the bikes or the all ride or the all cash
yeah,
or everything was tailored towards payments
yeah.
and transactions, and I think that really paid off for them. Just before I take Ayo's question, I wanted to ask you about.
No, there's also Doja Studio also have a question.
Oh, okay, okay. Let me read Georgia Studio's question.
No, she hasn't asked it. She just said she has a question.
Oh, okay. You
Or
can just raise your hands up, right? That's the model, right? That really works. I think my question was going to be on relationship,
yeah,
right? And one of your slides dealt with relationship.
mm,
Oftentimes, I feel like as founders, and I'm guilty of it as well, we push our team towards this particular goal because we 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 want them to focus on that problem we're trying to solve, right? But they are also struggling with their career journey, and we don't think about
mm.
their career journey, right? It's our career journey we're thinking about. How do we balance these two words? I don't know if my question is clear
Yeah, your question is clear. Um,
because
and
nobody
I,
talks
I
about it. Nobody talks about it, right?
No, they don't. And you see the fallout, right? And all the companies that have closed this year, all the bad press that has come because people didn't take care of their staff, right? So I spend a lot of time in HR. So I always use the word that founders need to be kind, right? It's not a word that you hear a lot, but kind to the people that are working for you, right? Particularly for those who are doing two jobs, keeping their body and soul alive. You're giving them equity, but they're working for you. How are you investing in them? As much as you invest in the product, we've heard it said so many times, the biggest asset any company has is people,
Yeah.
right? And we spend a lot of time building pitch decks. We spend a lot of time talking to investors, but we spend very little time talking to our team. We spend very little time building, asking questions, coaching them, right? Um, there's a founder that just approached me now to do 360 degrees on her C-suite, right? Because she knows that it's important, right? Because at the end of the day, your success is linked to the people that you're building with. And so if you don't build into your routine those simple check-ins, how are you doing? Like that's like it doesn't have to be we have a performance process, we do 360 degrees feedback. Those are things that come later as you grow. But can you start from the very beginning as making sure that they're okay. The story, and I can't remember which book I read it in. I would have told you, but the story about Bill Gates talking to one of his cleaners. She was cleaning the office late at night, and he said to her, "How are you doing, Lala?" And she said, she's struggling. And Bill Microsoft had just gone public then, and he said to her, "I said, look, if you can just buy one stock." You'll be fine. We're gonna do good. And I think at that time it was $13. I don't know. Can't remember the exact details, but long and short, with dividends and everything, this woman became a millionaire after about 15 years. And that's just because her boss, the CEO, had a chat with her one late evening while she was cleaning up. And I think that's the kind of mindset that we build into that. Ultimately what we're trying to build here is we're trying to build wealth for everybody and be intentional about it. Be intentional about checking in on your staff, not just have you delivered the code, like checking in on them to say, how are you doing? How is your life going? How are the challenges that you're facing? Because we all have challenges. We all have challenges. And I think that's why I said my simple answer would be just be kind. Be kind as a leader. And if you know that you don't have it in you, that's why people hire HR teams. Everybody says the first person you should hire as a founder, la, 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 the CTO, your CLO, and everybody forgets the people manager. Who is going to manage the people? And make sure that the people are okay. And I think that is something that, as part of your role as a founder, you need to build in that ultimately you need people. You're not a sole entrepreneur. You are building a business that requires input from others. So you need to have that. Start with being kind to your employees. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Georgia, let's have you, and then we have Ayomide.
And then we have to round up.
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Shola, for sharing your story with us. One thing I'm very particular about, or that I picked on in this section, is your story. I know you did a lot of, summarizing and all of that, but again, I did notice you did a lot of pivoting. Say base level from, say, you studied engineering and then at some point you worked as a security man, in the security system. Yeah. So I know it sounds so easy when you say it, right? But again, as someone that's because I have my background in, say, I studied geography in the university system, and then doing something entirely different. There's somewhat of an ego, yeah, because as an engineering graduate, going into like a different system, it's somewhat what means that you did not mind being a dummy in another industry, yeah, and then all of the years, the struggle before you got your degree as an engineer. What kind of mindset do you need to have to be able to accommodate changes like that? Because I know you've worked so hard to like achieve this, and then for some reason you want to go start on ground zero somewhere else. Yeah. Because I really picked on that. What kind of mindset do you need to have, and how do you let go of that ego of, I'm already something here, I'm someone here, but then again I want to go start on ground zero in another industry. I hope you get my
Yeah, I get your
question.
point. I get your point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I would say I think the mindset, and I talked about it a little bit, it has to be the end game mindset.
Sorry, sir.
Like,
Can I layer it?
yes, yeah.
Did you have an ego? I think I want to layer it. Did you feel like, oh, me, out of civil engineer, security, did you have that ego?
No, I didn't actually. I think, we have to be careful, right? Because I don't want to overplay my hand here. Because, part of why I was in the UK was because my fiance was there. So the big game was I want to get married. So I have to be in the same location and I have to pay bills, right? So I think I face people like sometimes people say to me, oh, but I'm not passionate about it. And I say, okay, know what feeds you and know what is your passion, right? Because when it comes down to it, you need to eat, you need to pay your bill. So so for me, security was what fed me. And so my ego didn't get in the way too much because I was like, on my ground zero, I need to work. There's no engineering job. So even if I wanted, I've done 100 applications, got 100 rejections. So it's not like I didn't try, but there was no room there, right? And I also said to myself, I can evolve, I can recreate myself. So to answer your question, Doja, it's the mindset of I'm not trapped. even though you feel it, the mindset is I'm not trapped, right? So if you're a founder and you found a business, and even if you got money and then all of a sudden the business changes, you don't let that failure um, stop you from bouncing back. That's where resilience comes into play to say there's a setback. I put everything into this, but now I can't do this. And maybe my biggest lesson from this, another sports illustration is from Tiger Woods, right? So when Tiger Woods was on the top of his game, he would say that when he has a bad hole, if you know anything about golf, as he's walking, as he picks up his ball, he has a ritual that says, that was that hole. I am not carrying that. But he spoke to his mental self. And by the time he got onto the next hole, he had cleared that failure from his mind and now was refocused on the next hole. Because I play golf too. If you don't do that, what happens when you get to the next hole, you start blaming yourself. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have used this iron. Maybe you start doubting your process of getting there. And guess what? That next hole, you will mess it up also because you haven't found a system to reframe yourself and reassemble yourself to push forward. So you ask the question, what's the mindset? I think that the mindset is anti-stock, right? Because I'm doing a security job, I knew in my heart that I will not be doing this forever, right? And so I just need to wait for the right opportunity. So you have this hunger, but in the meantime, it's paying my bills. And so I coined a phrase, and there's a podcast about it if you Google. This phrase is with your uniform, the uniform you're wearing doesn't define you. Because the fact that I was wearing a security guard uniform doesn't change the fact that I was a graduate of civil engineering, right? You can't take that away from me. It can't be taken away from me. It doesn't, the fact that I failed at a business, you can't take that away from me. I have now that experience, right? And actually, there will be some incubators that would say, unless you a multi-founder, they won't invest in you, right? Because they feel like you've done the first experience, you've learned from it. Now you're much stronger to go forward. And that's why some people don't understand. Some people don't understand why somebody who's failed, they go to the market and all of a sudden everybody wants to give them money again. This guy failed. But it's part of it that they now think, oh, you've learned from that first experience. So I think and to answer your question, Ayola, on top of it, that did I have an ego? I think at that time I didn't, but maybe later on in my career, ego builds. That's what I talk about. When you're in the middle of your career, all of a sudden you think that you are the best thing since sliced bread. You think that, we have the traction and, it's a bit like the VHS and Betamax story. We are here, we're in the market, we know what we're doing, or the Nokia story, although they revamped themselves. But, sometimes you can get stuck in your own success or your own failure that you're not ready to move to what's next. So I think that's kind of the mindset you need to have, is to say, this is what I'm doing now, but it doesn't define me, right? Whether my startup is successful or fails doesn't define me because I know who I am. And that's kind of, if you were here in the beginning, that's where I started. I said, who are you? Because knowing who you are is what helps you pivot through change. All right.
Okay. Ayomide, let's have your question and we can wrap it up.
The last one.
All right, sir. All right, sir. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
you're audible.
Oh, all right. All right, sir. I've been trying to speak like you, Mr. Shola, but Nigeria intonation is still. I know with time I'll get to the level of fluency you have. So the question, sir, is on we the bootstrappers. We the
Yeah.
bootstrappers. We are bootstrapping. Oh, yes, we are visionaries bootstrapping our startups. I work as an engineer, as a control room operator, but I'm building my startup with the aim of, with time, getting fully into it. So the question now is, sir, we are bootstrappers. How do we manage to, what are the skills? What are the techniques the smart moves that we can make to have a solid team, to have solid teams. Let's talk about marketing teams, customer care, even a strong legal backup. All these things, what are the techniques we can use, wisdom we can use to grab these guys, even without money to pay them enough, since we are bootstrapping? We are paying for compliance, we are paying for this cost here, paying from that cost, from our salaries, from our allowances. What are the skills we can use to gather these guys? We cannot just keep on sharing equity anyhow, like if it's cake. So this is an issue that has been on my mind. How do I go about it? I cannot be paying this guy salary. What can I do to motivate them to stay with me,
Yeah, it's a good
to stay
question.
into what I'm building? Strong co-founders. Yes, yes, sir. So, but in the end, I'm still going to need more. I'm still going to need more guys in terms of marketing,
Yeah,
customer care, a strong legal backing. Advise us. How do I go about this? Yes, yes, sir. This is an issue that many of us face. And the
yeah.
second one again, sir, is how do I contact you? How do I stay in touch with you?
You can find me
So,
on
yes,
LinkedIn.
this is my
That's an easy
question, sir.
one. Find me on
This is
LinkedIn.
just it. This is the issue.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best place to
All right,
find
sir.
me.
All right.
Okay. So to answer your question, and actually I would like Mr. Ayola to also chip in on this one too, because I think you have also you've experienced this, you know about this too. So let's have some experiential knowledge, right? So I do think that um the starting point for me is, and I'm going to sound, yeah, and I will, and let Mr. Ayola also build on this, right? Is your network. Who are the people around you,
around
right?
you.
You need a strong legal team, you need a strong marketer, you need a this. And yes, if you don't have a network of friendships that can almost say, hey, Mr. Yomide, my guy, I go help you, right? You need to think about your network, right? You need to think about the community around you. That's the first thing, and you're right. You can't keep dishing out equity. Sooner or later, equity go finish, cap table go jam, right? So you have to think about, how do I envision somebody so that they want to come along on the journey with me, regardless of how much I can pay them or give them. And that comes from knowing yourselves, knowing those who are around you, um, building something that you will be proud of. Bootstrapping is hard, and maybe you need to, there are techniques, right? Some people will say use the co-founder route, use the advisory route, use equity routes. But sooner or later, if you're bootstrapping long enough, you will exhaust all those routes. And so I would go back to this whole storytelling, vision capturing that makes somebody want to say, you know what, actually, I'll come along the journey with you, knowing fully well that if we're successful, we will um we will get to the other side. There's also a side of the story where, which, yes, you're bootstrapping, and so therefore there's not a lot of money. And so actually learning to add on a bit more of these functions yourself, like marketing. Yes, you need a good marketer, but what can you do by yourself? I mean, thank God for ChatGPT now. If you have a legal question, even before you go to your lawyer, you can ask ChatGPT, like, read this document, look at this contract, look at this agreement, give me some hints, right? So there's a lot you can leverage from your network. There's a lot you can leverage from your technology. And then maybe the last point I'll make before Mr. Ala jumps in is, you also have to descale your brain, right? Because a lot of times you have a startup, and before you know it, I see it all the time in pitch decks, you want to spend 100,000 on marketing.
Mm.
Like, why? Like, why? That's an old methodology that we've kind of carried over because that was advertising budget. So it's an old methodology. There's a new methodology now, right? Where if you listen to TikTok enough, they will tell you that you can build a business without zero spend on marketing. I'm not saying that's what you need, but I'm just saying that You also have to descale your brain that, I need a marketer. Do you really think about it, right? What are you trying to market? Um, how much of it have you tried to do for $0? How many times do you post on LinkedIn? How many times do you post on Instagram? Most of these things are free to do, right? Can you get an intern instead of a marketing expert, right? Leveraging what is around you to get you to the place where the key question I ask founders, when are you going to start making revenue? Because all this bootstrapping, if it doesn't lead to
Revenue.
dollars on the door, then you're just in a vicious cycle. So let me stop. Mr. Ayola, you want to add to
All
that
right.
question?
Thank you. Thank you. Well said, sir. I think that I would go from personal experience, right?
Yeah,
People would want to join you on your journey if they know where you're coming from. You
yeah,
must have a track record, right? It's more like I've seen this guy do this for different businesses or do something in this business. I see the passion that he has when he's handling other people's stuff. It seems like this guy has something to offer. I might just want to jump on the board with this guy. And I'll tell you my story. My co-founder and I worked in a company together. And we did multiple projects worth millions of naira. I don't know if anybody remembers the Heineken Shazam a Bottle campaign. It was one of our brainchild ideas. We did that. We did it. Some websites, development for Marsilia Motors, trying to sell Eclipse Cross for like 30 million naira. And, I remember the client saying that she doesn't think it's going to work, but we just believed in ourselves. We sold it and we were able to, push through the boundaries. But he knew me for one thing. If I said I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. And I would see the results till the very end, So when I jumped on a journey, trying to build a prop tech called Apate, he was first in mind because he would always have the answers for me to say, you know what, let's try it. So my point exactly is that people are ready to go on journey with you if they know that you have something you stand for. Maybe not necessarily that you have a track record, but this guy stands for this. If he says this is going to do this. The second thing I would say to you as well is value. What, beyond trying to get people on board, right? What value do you think you can put out there? For us, we was tough getting founders, identifying founders to even come. Of course, founders will go where there's money, but one of the things we said to ourselves we wanted to do was to add values to founders. And it's just opened the doors for us, right? Founders are willingly accepting us, right? So because we started putting out value, people now work with us because they see the value that we put out there, right? So sometimes I don't think that you necessarily need to worry yourself about that. For me personally, I would also say that one of the things that has worked for me as well is the fact that I go to people I've worked with in the past, people that I know that have done stuffs. And my conversations with them are usually very straightforward. We don't have the funds now. We're working on something. This is what we can do for you. Are you willing to join? Like, have difficult conversations first. Don't lead on and say, oh, don't worry, we're willing to pay you. And then at the end of the day, you are putting yourself in a bottleneck that you cannot come out from. The last thing I would say as well is that, and I think Mr. Shola already mentioned, is that I think the point is you should be able to do things by yourself. You are the CEO of the company. You are the idea. You should try to do the sales yourself. You are the salesman. You are the marketer at the very beginning before you start to add people to your team. I added a technical person to my team because I didn't have the technical know-how. But could it have been outsourced? Yes. If I had the funds, I probably could have outsourced it, and then built the platform. But it was good that I had somebody come on that journey. But the marketing, the sales, the customer service, I do it myself because I want to also know where the problem is. I want to speak to the founders. I want to be able to understand the founders' problem. I want to be able to let the founders tell me directly, right? Not that you cannot have a team for it, but you should know when to scale for a team. If you are bootstrapping, I think that the first thing is that you grow small and grow impactful. I think that that's the word that stuck to me in the last 3 years. Grow small and be impactful. Don't try to scale up. And that's the problem with some of the companies I've worked in the past. We were growing rapidly, and I'll give an example. Maybe when we want to post it online, I would edit it out of it, right? But I worked at Patricia, right? And one of the problems that we had was we were hiring back to back. Hiring almost every week is a new face, right? For things that maybe what you could have done is to have a project management tool, manage deliverables and timelines. But because we thought, okay, so let me use marketing for instance. I would hire a content writer, and then I would hire a script writer. The content writer can actually do the job of a script writer. Maybe not so experienced, but I don't need two people to do the job of one person. One person might be able to multitask to do the job of two people at the very beginning, and so the same thing with customer service. Because the numbers of the users were growing, we were hiring more customer service team people, right? Now I think automation has become a key thing, right? You can automate certain processes in your customer service thing. But then we thought that because the numbers were growing, we needed more people for it. And by the time you look at your capex, you're not able to meet up, right? Even your profit is also going into human resources. And again, Mr. Shola said something earlier as well. You need a people's person. You might outsource HR to somebody who can have that conversation on your behalf, right? There are people who have that skill set, who have the people and the following to say, you know what, I can take a bet on Ayomide because I know him. Would you be willing to work with him? And just because maybe Mr. Shola is the HR on your project, you will see people who will work with you because of Mr. Shola's relationship. So trust and relationship also play a very key role when it comes to people. I think that's what has worked for me. But with different startups, with different founders, different terrains, right? So know what works, but I would say that you need to be grounded in your business as well. Otherwise, you would hire right people for the wrong roles or wrong people for the right roles. I don't know if that's answers the question.
No, it's very clear, Mr. Ayo. Thank you so much, Mr. Shola, as well. Thank you.
Anyway, so Mr. Ibuka has his hand up, and there's one question in the chat, and that will be it. No more after that. So, Mr. Ibuka, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
Mr. Ayo, Mr. Shola. Well, today's session has been really interesting and impactful. However, my questions are tough. First, I'd like to address what the last question was, how, as a, he's bootstrapping and, how to like get people on board. I'll bring in my own personal experience. I don't know if it would be much of any help. When I started with Umbrella Saturdays, I think I was just me and my CTO, right? And I haven't met my CTO by reaching out to my big brother. I was like, okay, see, I have this plan, and then I need people to work on the plan with me because my background is in marketing, and the company we're starting is a tech company, full tech company actually. So he recommended or referred someone to me, and the guy saw the plan. I was like, oh, I like this. I want to jump on it, and that was it. That's how I got the CTO. And then joining Umbrella Saturday made me understand how important it is to build a system, to have a structure in any business. Because I understand I can't raise a business on my own. So I had to look for a people person. Lucky for me, I met someone, a friend of my younger sister, who is actually very, very smart and very good with people. So, showed her the plan and she's interested. So my people person is here. So she's the one now helping me handle people that are going to work with me. And then I have the chief technical officer who is going to be handling the technical part of the company, then I'm the marketer. So what I do, or the way we split everything out, is I go out teaching, speaking to people about the plan, doing market research and things like that. He, on the other hand, is bothering himself with building the app, and then she is helping me make sure that everybody is doing okay. But in the question of how do I pay these people, the only idea that came to me, lucky for me, I managed to meet Mr. Ayola one-on-one in an event that I went for. I'm so happy I did meet him. And in case you guys don't know, he's a very tall man, very tall. So I, I spoke with him, and from that day I understood that, see, okay, I don't have so much money. I actually don't even have money to be giving out on salaries to anybody. Okay, and I can't be giving out equity like it's cake. And so what I could do rather was reach an agreement. One, this business plan is something that will work, provided that all the what will I use now? Like all the factors that are needed for a business to survive, to succeed, are put in place, then your business can work, right? So I just, I asked the people person to reach out to, okay, we need someone in this department, or we need someone to help us achieve this. And then she'll bring in someone. We check through the person's, experience, his CV, we discuss, and I let you know that, see, we can get our prototype out. It is my own responsibility to make sure that money comes in. And once we reach that agreement, the question now is, how much do you want to earn from this? Okay, so for now, it's all contract based. Once we are done with the contract, right, then we can work our separate ways. So far, everybody has come back to me and they're telling me, you know what, even if we are not even done with the MVP phase, they're asking me, I want to be part of this full time. I want to be part of this team for like full time. How do I become a full time staff? And that's where it's really bugging my head, because I don't even know how I'm going to like restructure and say, okay, I'm going to pay you this amount, I'm going to pay you that amount. I've not even finished building the whole financial modeling to be able to say, okay, this is how much I will pay you, or this is how much I'll pay this person. But these guys are really doing great. So that's the part that is, bothering my head right now. Like, how do I transition from having these guys as contract staff to full-time staff? How do I manage all this? I know, with a long time of thinking, I might be able to come up with something, but I really need, I don't know, a mentor, or, someone that can help me like reduce this so much thinking in my head to make this thing work out. So that's my question. How do I like, especially when it comes to people, how do I transition them from having, okay, you guys are just contract based? And to be honest, I feel like what I'm even offering them so is really, really small compared to the work they are doing. They are really doing wonderful, all of them, to make this happen. So I don't know. That's
I,
what.
I,
But
I think if I take the question before Mr. Shola would be that focus on revenue. If revenue comes in, there's a way that you might be able to structure salaries, right? And then that becomes your pivot. That would be my own first suggestion, right? When money, like Mr. Shola said, all these things we're saying, if you're not making money, bootstrapping, and you keep bootstrapping, you are going around the circles, right? If you're able to pay the contract guys and they built the product and the product is not bringing money, it's like you've wasted, time building that particular product. Revenue is very important. So I think that for me would be that when you're making revenue, what you have now is sustaining the business, but it's not sustainable. Revenue helps you sustain the business. Any business that's making money would have money to pay for the staff. I think that would be my own addition to it. I don't know if Mr. Shola has something to add to.
No, that's a very good answer. I think there is something in engineering called critical path, and I encourage founders to find the critical path. What is the pathway to making money? Right? Because nobody is in this business just for the fun of it. We're not just building apps and having fun. We are building so that the apps can make money. And so the quicker you find the critical path, what's the pathway to making revenue? Then the questions around how you structure the payroll, how you structure, how you pay people, whether you give them equity and all those kind of questions become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, if you're asking the question, it's like, even before I get to that, I'm just trying to plan ahead and think ahead. Then I would encourage you to do research, right? And you don't even need to pay for it. You can just go into ChatGPT and say, I have a front-end developer in my team. What is the average salary of a front-end developer in a B2B SaaS in Nigeria? And it will come up with, average salary. So at least you have that at the back of your mind, and then you can build a spreadsheet that says, okay, the average salary I need to pay a software developer, front-end developer, back-end developer is this. And then you can start building out what your payroll look like. But you can't do any of those things until you actually
Making money.
raise revenue. I know people will say, well, what if I get funding? Well, that's a potential route, but funding, no matter how much you collect, it will run out if you don't have revenue to back it. So I always say to founders, find the critical path to revenue generating. Because once you get to that path and you can make it repeatable, all these questions around how much do I pay people, how much do I offer people becomes easy, because if you're making $1, you can't now be paying staff $2. You make it within the context of the framework of what you have. And of course, I have the benefits of working in large corporations, working in payroll, setting people's salary, hiring people, offering them crazy, ridiculous amounts of money to come and join us, depending on which company I was working for. So, these things follow success, so to say. And kudos to you for finding people that trust you and are willing to go on the journey with you. Make the journey not too long, Sha, because goodwill runs out. 12 months from now, they'll be like, oh boy, will they wait for you? Nothing will happen. So you need to learn to, navigate that critical path to revenue generating. Because once you start generating revenue, at least some of those questions are answered. So hopefully that's helpful.
One last thing.
Yes, sir.
One last thing. For the revenue generation, so
Yes.
we've been able to come up with a strategy. It's very simple. Yes, we can generate revenue. However, this is the thing. Is the pricing that's the problem. I don't know if it's part of what you do, but trying to figure out how to create this pricing structure, because it's
So
what we are trying to do here is in the mobility tech sector. It's not like Uber. But let's do it like this. If Google and Uber had a child, is what we are trying to do. But now this child is not going to. It's going to have a part of Google. It's also of Google Map, and it's also going to have a part of Uber. But we are not going to be working with private guys. We're going to be working with the public sector. You understand? So the question now is, how do we now structure our pricing? How much do we charge? We intend to get our money off drivers and also off the commuters.
So
you know what? Let me just stop it.
To answer your question, I think I've answered this question before, but I'll answer it again on this call. You need to do and Mr. Sola said it while he was presenting, your competitors, right? You need to do a thorough competitive analysis, right? You need to check what's playing out in your industry, whether on the Uber side of things, whether on the Google side of things, how much are they offering? And also ask the customers, how much is the customer willing to pay for this service? And that's why at the very initial stage, before you start to build out the product, we always say, speak to the customers, do a product market fit. All these things are embedded in it. There are questions that are embedded in that stage that helps you play out. And I think I've shared my experience while we built Umbrella as well. We also had the price, and I typically understand it from a founder's perspective, that pricing, sometimes you feel like you are valued at something, and then when you put that price, you don't see anybody paying for it. We when we started out Umbrella, we did a lot of competitive analysis. The guys who were offering almost similar product like what we would offer on Umbrella, your DD, your due diligence, your data room, your investor matching, we're charging as high as $3,000, sometimes $4,000 if you go into a negotiation. In fact, sometimes you have like 2, 3 calls where they're just telling you the value they can offer, and there's still no guarantee to fundraising, because it's what it is, but you would have paid the money for it. And that was like just to review your pitch deck. I don't know, Mr. Shola, I'm sure you probably know some of this,
Yeah.
right? But when we started out, we were way cheaper. We were like 300 and something dollars for a whole year, as compared to $3,000. That's like a whole cut. But still, I can tell you for a fact, without any ego, like the other person said the other time, without any ego, we didn't get founders to pay, right? So we went back and asked the question, why are people not paying? We built everything. It was holistic. Why are they not paying? And when we asked founders, they said they were willing that, they would pay within this price range, right? Because I'm data driven, right? And maybe that's my advice to you as well. You need to be very data driven when building products. Let data and numbers tell you stuff. I put out a lot of questionnaires on LinkedIn, asked a couple of questions, went to some founders, groups that I belong to or communities, asked the communities what they were willing to pay for it. But you know what? We decided to do a slash. We said, okay, you know what, let's go and let's reduce the price down. I think now it's like maybe $30 for a subscription. Because again, when people are willing to pay when they have a clear understanding of the value that you provide. I think that's also
Exactly.
a question.
Exactly.
So it's really not about the price. Some people, when the price is even way lower, they feel like there's no value there. Again, I don't know. It's a funny metric sometimes when you sometimes price yourself too cheap as opposed to what the competitors in your marketplace are playing. For you, it might be a strategy to win. In marketing, we call it brand war, brand war room. There's a course they do in IMC where they teach you about when brands go into price war. You've seen it with Pepsi and Coca-Cola, where they did the long throat. The other one did a rubber bottle, but still offering you the same price. You've seen it with Dangote do it sometimes. I think within the cement industry where he did a slash on the price of cement, just to win the market. But it's not sustainable just reducing your
No.
to just acquire customers, because after a while you also still want to come back up. You also still want to start scaling up your prices, right? And then you might not get repeat customers. So I think that it's about the value. If you do your research well, and then you are also offering a value that the market that place you like, that's we call it your unique selling proposition. If your unique selling proposition is of value to whoever is willing to take the money out of their pocket, I think that you win the share of voice, share of wallet, share of minds, and then that would also now result to you even knowing how much you charge the customers. And I think that for us, that really worked. It wasn't really about just reducing the prices. We took off some things that were making our costs very heavy, right? We didn't try to do due diligence anymore by ourselves. What we did was, you know what, let's partner with people who offer due diligence services. And if they're able to offer it as a price point that works for the founders, let them have a conversation. Do it. I think that's what I'll just stop there so that maybe Mr. Shila
Yeah.
can add the last point to it.
Yeah, I think the idea about what value you are creating is very key. But the second thing is, what pain are you solving and what costs? So I was doing a workshop with a founder and they were trying to price a product, and I was like, why are you trying to come up with a price? Why don't you go to the customer and say, if I provide you with this product, how much is it actually going to save you? Like, how much time does it save you? So first of all, you understand the value you're creating, but you understand how you're getting rid of the pain point. those two things combined help you to kind of get a gauge of how much a customer will be willing to pay. And Mr. Ayola talked about it, PMF, product market fit. There's an element where you do a bottom-up approach to say, what are all the inputs that create the costs for us, server cost, blah, blah, blah. That kind of gives you like the minimum you can charge for this to be profitable for you. But then the question is, the minimum you're going to charge, is it going to be in line with what the customer would want to buy, right? And that's why you have tiered pricing. Like, it's a whole concept, right, that you have to think about. But I think the two easiest things to think about is, number one, what value are you creating? And then what pain are you removing? And what's the cost to the end customer for that pain to be removed? And you combine those two things, it kind of begins to show you where that price point will be. And with the example Mr. Ayola had given around umbrella, you're cheaper than the competition, but you're not trusted as the competition. So your price lowered. It could even be sending negative messages.
Feedback, yeah.
Yeah, very feedback. But once you really set what value you're creating, all of a sudden you're drawing people not necessarily just because of price, but you're drawing because of the value you're creating. And that's the key. Let's create value, and then we'll sort out pricing, but there is a science to it. It's not guesswork. It's not finger in the air. My service is $50, right? Like how? So that'll be it. And then the last question I'm going to take
That's
is
that's the question I
yeah.
would say you should use to round up your session and
Yeah.
recap.
Okay. And you do the recap, I mean, not me.
Yeah, I would do recap.
Yeah. So the last question is, what's the toughest decision you took in your career, and most especially when you transitioned? For me, transition was plenty. There were plenty of transitions on the way. But maybe just to answer your question, Vanessa, I think probably the time where I was more conscious of my transitions was when I was transitioning from being a programmer to becoming a business analyst, because I transitioned because I read the room. I read the trend. The trend was programming jobs were being outsourced to India. And so sooner or later, my job will become redundant. And so I intentionally evolved myself, right? I didn't want to be told one day that, oh, now your job is no more available. So I evolved into being a business analyst. When I got to a business analyst role, I realized that even those jobs are going to India. And so I said, how do I future-proof myself? I did civil engineering, so I understand how projects work. And there was an opportunity to do a project, so I put my hand up. So some of my transitions, some of the decisions I've made, some of them have been through mentoring and coaching, and some of them have been by putting your hand up. So to answer your question properly, let me just rephrase the answer. What is the toughest decision you took in your career, most especially when you transitioned? I think the toughest decision is to put myself in a place where I'm the least qualified in the room, right? And how do you then make yourself qualified? And I think how I did that was by learning, reading, asking for advice. And I will end this answer with one of the best jobs I got in my life was when I started working for Naspers, and I did 10 interviews before I got that job. 10 interviews. So it was really tough to get in. And once I got in, I was now like under pressure, if you like, to prove myself. And then one vice president called me. We're now good friends today. He called me and he said, Shola, I know you're going to be under this illusion that you have to take on big projects and, show big value creation. He said, my advice to you is start from the low-hanging fruit. Start from the little things that are not going to take 6 months to deploy. Start from things that you can deploy in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then prove this flywheel effect. I don't know if you heard of the flywheel effect, and you can do this over and over again. And guess what? People start to trust you. People start to trust that, okay, Shola can deliver. Shola can deliver. So when Shola now says he wants to do this big thing. We're not afraid because we've seen Shola deliver on a 2-week project. We've seen him deliver on a 4-week project. We've seen him deliver on a 6-week project. So now that he says he wants to take on a 1-year project, I think we can trust him. And that's the same thing when you have a business, right? Everybody's not going to buy all the features of your product on day one. They'll buy the small bits first, test it out. Oh, okay, this thing is working. Or this umbrella factor, they work. Oh, I'm learning something. I'll come back next week. So when Ayola now says, okay, actually, if you want to access, something even bigger, you have to pay $2. You say, I listen to this thing for free. $2 is not a big number. You understand? Like I'm just giving an example. And it's that idea sometimes that also could backfire where people use freemium to bring people in. But like I say, if you bring people in on freemium, it's very hard to
To
convert them
collect
to
money.
pay you.
To collect money.
Yeah. So you kind of have to find a balance, right? You almost want to give people a FOMO or fear of missing out, and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they've done 7-day trial, they want to pay, right? Because the value you've created for them, right, is so powerful. And I don't know how I debated into that, but to your point, to the question, what is the decision you've taken in your career, and most especially when you transition? I think I've answered that. And yeah.
All
And
right.
it's, I'm still evolving. Like, I'm in another change now. So you keep evolving, you keep learning, you keep looking for opportunities, and you keep growing. That will be my final answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shola. I think that to just round up the entire session, I think that one of the again, can transitioning be bad on your CV? I'm asking from a career point of view now, not a founder's point of view, because I've had an HR who says this person moves around too much. 2 years here, 1 year here, another job, like different industries, just crossing around. It seems like this person is just after money or unstable. Can transitioning also or change in career also mean that you're unstable? I don't know if this is a question I should ask you, sir, but
Yeah, post COVID, before COVID, people would say you moving around too much was a bad sign. Post FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Meta, people would say you moving around too much was not a good sign. But actually, what has happened in the recruitment space is now, particularly if you're in that Facebook, Meta, Google world, if you haven't moved after 18 months, people will be looking at you funny. That means you're not ambitious, you're not. So I think the rules change with climate, right? So post-COVID, people expect you to move around, people expect you to be agile. There's still room for you to stay in one kind of role, but it depends on the kind of job you're applying for. I've recruited and hired so many people, but when I was at my last company in Aspers, there are certain people I will not hire. If you've not done consulting, I won't hire you because the kind of job we were doing was like consulting. So if you don't have that experience, you don't have that experience of coming into work. Like when I was working for Naspers, I come into work, I don't know which problem I'm going to be solving that day. Is it India's problem? Is it China's problem? Is it Brazil's problem? It wasn't a normal, just wake up, you go and solve one problem. No, I wake up, I can come in and India might be the one that's on fire. And it's a completely different problem. And you have to have that agility to be able to do it. So there are some roles that require you to be consistent. Like if you have a doctor that's moving around a lot, you'll be like, this doctor, there's no, are you moving around because you're making mistakes? Or if you have a programmer that's moving around a lot, I mean, look at how old is that guy that they hired for 100 million for Meta? How old is the person himself? The person himself is 24 years old, right? And they hired him for 100 million. So tells you where the world is going, right? Years ago, that would never have happened. You have to have years of experience to be able to command a 100 million salary, right? But the world is evolving. The world is moving so fast. ChatGPT came out in 2023. It's changed the landscape. So I think the world is changing. What recruiters are looking for has changing. If you want to go and work in local government and you'll be moving around every 18 months, they might not hire you because they'll be worried that you go again, right? If you want to go and work in Amazon, they actually like the fact that you've spent 18 months. That means you're learning. And actually, what an Amazon or Facebook is doing is like, as you go around for the next 18 months, maybe on your third 18 month, we want you to be willing to come back to us. And that's why you see people boomerang back to Amazon or they boomerang back to Facebook. So actually, they've designed their intake and outtake to help you boomerang that when you spend your 18 months and you don't like Netflix, you can come back to Amazon, or you don't like somewhere, you come back to us. So it shows you that recruitment strategies are changing with time. So there's an old adage that, too much moving around means that we should be wary of you. And there's a new adage that says no moving around means that why would I take a bet on you when we're a fast moving company? So you kind of need to understand the philosophy of the company that you're applying to be clear that and that's why I had 10 interviews, right? Because my background was from stable, long-term companies, and I'm now trying to join Deliveroo, which is a fast-moving, 100,000% growth. And the worry was that will I even be able to cope with that dynamic, right? Because I've been in very stable, long-term, blue chip organizations, and now I'm coming to this startup. So even before they started the interview, they took a reference. Even before I started my interview, like let's just get the reference up front. Let's not finish the interview process. Let's get the reference up front. This guy, do what we need him to do.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on Umbrella Saturday. We've tried to keep these sessions on that one, but I don't know. It never does, sir. I think that I will come from mentorship and coaching on how to reduce it to every session has always extended to 1 o'clock. I don't know. It takes the whole of Saturdays. Maybe we should do pre-questions, but again, that it can't work. But it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you very much for honoring the invite. God would honor you, honor your family, honor your loved ones, honor your grandchildren. I was seeing your status this morning with your grandchild, I believe.
Yeah, yes, my grandson, yeah.
Your grandson. And I was like, how do you have time to do all this and still have family time? But God will honor you and bless the works of your hands. You will not fail. Nothing will die in your hands, sir.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you. I'm super excited about the knowledge you've shared, and I really want to share. I don't know if you permit, if we can share the documents on LinkedIn. I don't think it's a document for just the umbrella community, to be very honest. I think that is a document that you should share, and I will just repost it to my community. It will be better that way so that people can take learnings from you, sir. And to be very honest, sir, I don't know if you still travel the world, but I think that what you shared with us is something you should share with the world. It's mind-blowing.
Thank you. For at least for the starter point, I will share the slides with you so at least you can share with everybody that registered. So let's start from there, and then we'll work out how we share more broader. Yeah. I will be in
your books
Nigeria in
as well.
September.
Your books as well. You were going to, if we could get your books as well. I would like to purchase the book. If this is what I got on the call, I'm sure that the book will have more insightful stuff for me as well, and the community. So
yeah, I'll send you a link for that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. All right. But I was also saying I'm going to be in Nigeria in September. So.
Oh, great. GTEx?
Yeah. No. Other thing.
Yeah. All right, no problem.
Well, yeah, we can talk. Yeah.
All right, no problem.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Have a great day, sir. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. Have a great weekend. Next week, we'll be having someone very interesting from the same community as well. We'll be coming to share his wealth of knowledge in the VC space. It's someone I hold very dearly as well. And I don't know which communities you report, but I think that you should also join with Oyeka's community. The wealth of knowledge being shared in that community is a whole lot. And maybe one of these days I'll bring Onyeka to the forefront to come and share his own founder story and how he's also pivoted into community as well. It's growing one of the best communities that I've joined in my life. You know, and I'm learning a lot from it. So next week I have Adekunle Mikai joining us to come and speak around from risk to return, rebuilding trust in Africa's venture investing. And I think that is very important conversations that we need to have. The trust is broken. We've seen a lot of founders take investors' funds for granted. Also, we've also found that investors are also losing trust in a couple of founders. And we see these things again. We're quick to judge. I don't know. Maybe it's another conversation that we need to also have. Failing should not be seen as the way we see it in Africa, right? If the founders fail, we should be able to, you know, maybe not celebrate the failures, but of course, encourage the founders. And that was one of the conversation I was saying the other day when I was saying that nobody's checking the founders' mental health. So I'm also still looking for someone who will speak on mental health to founders, how we can balance mental health, because failure, I don't know how founders who have failed get the momentum to build again. You know, some never get it right ever again. You know, and I've seen some of my colleagues who left a failed company who are still struggling to have their feet together. You know, so I think it's just very important conversations to have. But Mikai will be here to speak to us around building trust in the venture investing space. What are investors looking at, and how can founders build this trust? You know, and we'll be a wrap next week for the month of August, and then in September we would have very interesting speakers as well. I think that we would stop for this year in the month of November, and then maybe we pick up the conversations after a proper audit of Umbrella Saturday. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. It's been a pleasure. We hope that this is adding value to the ecosystem. Again, it's just our way of contributing back to the ecosystem, and we hope that this would be more successfully planned out episodes. Do have a great weekend, and see you next week.